Chapter 862, Divine Sense Bombardment. 1. The destructive pressure caused Li Lingshan's entire body to be suspended in the air as if he was imprisoned. It was not difficult to tell from the strength of this pressure that this was definitely a powerhouse at the third level of the war god realm. There were 14 powerhouses at the third firmament of the martial god realm in Xiaoyao Immortal Palace. They knew that Li Lingtian was not a simple person, but they did not think much of him. The only array master Li Lingtian was terrifying was Lin Zhirong. This pressure wasn't Lin Zhirong's. Besides, Lin Zhirong was with them, so they naturally wouldn't attack him. Li Lingtian smiled bitterly. With a flick of his divine consciousness, he unleashed the power of heaven and earth while the heavenly demon domain was activated at the same time. A huge pressure protected him and then ruthlessly blasted outwards. Boom! With a dull thud, the entire land and space trembled. Li Lingtian was imprisoned by the ultimate powerhouse's pressure. Initially, the other party thought that he would be destroyed by the pressure, but after unleashing the heavenly demon domain and the power of heaven and earth, the terrifying power of heaven and earth repelled the other party's pressure. He was then able to resist. With a single blow, the two auras collided fiercely and Li Lingtian was thrown out. Shoo! Li Lingtian retreated 100 meters before he forced himself to stop. With a grave expression on his face, he exhaled a breath of cold air. He was shocked by the might of the pressure. At the same time, there was a surprised exclamation in the air. A second sky of the martial saint realm without the protection of the martial god realm was able to escape from the pressure of a third sky of the martial god realm. Naturally, he was shocked beyond words. The air trembled, and a black-robed elder appeared in the air. He hovered steadily in the air and stared coldly at Li Lingtian with an ever-changing expression. Li Lingtian kept sizing up the old man when he appeared. The old man was dressed in black and had a faint mysterious aura around him. He was a third heaven martial god with a profound cultivation base. However, compared to the blue-robed scholar, he was still quite a distance away. He was one of the 13 third-level war gods. He had never thought that the first person he would encounter upon entering this place would be a third-level war god. This luck was really not ordinary bad luck. If it was normal, he could escape quickly. However, now that the speed and divine sense were restricted in the Xiaoyao Immortal Palace, the chance of escaping was very small. It was impossible to use the true dragon body protection. After all, the Yinglong was too tall. If it were to leave the ground for 100 meters, it would suffer the destructive might of the sky. Silk. The sound of wind rang out as the thunderclap wings were displayed. Faint blue electric arcs were seen on the crystalline thunderclap wings, making them look extremely mysterious. At this moment, the first thing he had to do was to increase his speed. If it did not work, he could only use the thunderclap wings to escape. In this place, he had lost many of his advantages. He had no confidence in fighting against a third firmament war god. Junior, hand over your bag of holding and I can leave your corpse intact. You're unlucky to have met me, hee hee. The elder in black looked at Li Lingshan's movements with disdain. To resist at such a time was like a dying struggle. However, he still wanted to see how powerful this second sky of the martial saint realm was. He had actually obtained so many tokens and transferred hundreds of billions of low-grade spiritual stones at once. Low-grade spirit stones were of no use to martial god powerhouses at all. They were just data. However, 100 million spirit stones was not a small amount for a martial god expert. Usually, a martial god expert would be lucky to have a few 100 million spirit stones. A few billion spirit stones was considered rich, and a few billion spirit stones was an astonishing wealth. These experts were all overlords or grand elders of a family. They only had tens of billions of spirit stones after gathering the wealth of a region and a family. Otherwise, they wouldn't have been able to take out so many spirit stones. In order to obtain the token, these experts had practically exhausted all the spirit stones on them. There were even martial god powerhouses who did not have 30 billion spiritual stones. In the end, Li Lingtian gave the token to them for nothing. Looking at the hundreds of billions of spiritual stones, even a third firmament martial god had never seen so many spiritual stones. Ever since Li Lingtian sold his token and earned hundreds of billions of spiritual stones, he had become the target of countless powerhouses to kill and rob him of his treasures. Even if they could not obtain any treasures after entering Xiaoyao Immortal Palace, they would be able to make a fortune by obtaining Li Lingshan's spiritual stones. A few 100 billion spirit stones could completely develop a powerful family and not have to worry about spirit stones for the rest of their lives. The black-clad elder did not expect to meet Li Lingtian and was overjoyed. A second sky of the martial saint realm expert could be killed easily. More importantly, Lin Zhirong, who was by Li Lingshan's side, was not around. This meant that Li Lingtian was left alone after the random teleportation. Where could he find such a great opportunity? It was like giving him spiritual stones. If you want to obtain my storage pouch, it's very simple. You just have to defeat me. Li Lingshan's expression was calm. He had already unleashed the Ice Soul martial soul in his body. He must not lose his composure at this moment. In front of such a heaven-defying expert, if they were to panic, they would not have a chance at all. They would not even have the chance to escape and resist. He circulated the true essence in his entire body to the extreme, and he also used the 5 elements sacred body. The heavenly sword body, the true dragon body protection, and all the methods that helped to defend his body were used. As soon as he finished speaking, the 5 elements of Tao intent raged in the air, and his eyes revealed a cold expression. 9 heavens, taboo. Li Lingshan's calmness and composure shocked the black-robed elder. He had never expected a second heaven martial saint to be so calm when facing a third heaven martial god. Moreover, this calmness and composure was not faked. Li Lingtian extended his hands and the 5 elements Tao will changed. A ball of terrifying flames and a ball of ice appeared in his hands and the air began to tremble. The appearance of 2 extremely destructive attributes in one person's hand and the simultaneous use of this attack immediately made the old man feel wary. In the blink of an eye, Li Lingtian clasped his hands together and the aura of death and destruction appeared between heaven and earth. At the same time, the 2 auras merged and transformed into the aura of extermination. At that moment, a beam of light appeared. The aura of extermination in the air became even more terrifying. All living things were destroyed at this moment. The pillar of light fiercely bombarded the black-robed old man. The entire process seemed to take a long time, but in fact, it only took the blink of an eye. Not bad, you have some skills, but in front of me, it's still a piece of cake. I'll show you the true power of the war god. Tyrannical profound annihilation. The black-robed old man looked at the destructive pillar of light, and his expression changed. Although he said it casually, he was shocked in his heart. This destructive pillar of light was the fusion of 2 extreme attributes, and its power was destructive. When 2 opposing attributes were combined, a shocking power would appear. He was shocked when he first saw Li Lingtian displaying the 2 attributes. He did not expect that he could actually combine the 2 attributes. As the sound of his voice faded, the true essence in his entire body surged like waves. He then stretched out one hand in the air and used the other hand to perform several hand seals. A huge palm slammed down from the sky. The destructive handprint was like countless mountains pressing down. Li Lingshan's heart trembled as he looked at the destructive handprint. It was a powerful visual impact when faced with such power. Boom! Rumble! A shocking explosion sounded as the pillar of light and the handprint collided. Immediately, bursts of booming sounds continued. At the same time, the pillar of light and the palm print collided, emitting endless halos. The halos swept through space, and wherever these halos passed, they continued to destroy and tear space. Li Lingtian and the black-robed elder were both within the destructive halo. Their terrifying defense was able to withstand the bombardment of the halo. In the sky, the light pillar continued to clash with the palm print. The two of them continued to bear the attacks of the halo. The black-robed old man felt the terrifying halo and was extremely shocked. This was because the other party was only at the second sky of the martial saint realm, yet he had actually executed such a terrifying attack. Not to mention the destructive attack, it could not determine the outcome of his attack for the time being. However, Li Lingtian did not seem to be injured in the midst of the destructive halo. His defense was simply heaven-defying. Eye of the Divine Soul. It was at this moment that Li Lingshan's eyes flashed with determination. A scarlet lotus-shaped rune appeared between his eyebrows. The rune was extremely exquisite, and traces of scarlet light appeared in the rune. The moment this rune appeared, a destructive divine sense blasted out and struck the black-robed old man's sea of consciousness. When his soul consciousness entered his sea of consciousness, the black-robed old man was completely stunned. Even if he was beaten to death, he wouldn't dare to imagine a second sky martial saint using soul consciousness to attack a third sky martial god. Even though he was a third firmament martial god, he did not dare to attack Li Lingtian with his divine consciousness so as not to damage his own. Furthermore, Li Lingtian was only a second heaven martial saint while he was a third heaven martial god. The difference was like heaven and earth, but Li Lingtian had done it. This was something he had never expected. After this kind of thing happened, it was already too late to guard against it. Feeling the destructive spiritual sense constantly attacking his sea of consciousness, he quickly gathered his spirit and prepared to counterattack. However, he found that this divine sense was extremely powerful and was not inferior to him at all. This situation made him even more shocked. The divine sense of a second sky martial saint was actually comparable to the third sky martial god. In that instant, the destructive spiritual awareness pierced his sea of consciousness. Immediately, a burst of pain came from his sea of consciousness, and his entire person was stunned for a moment. Within the destructive halo, there were also attacks from hand seals and light pillars. Such a sluggish state was simply courting death. Ah! Rumble! Pft! His divine consciousness was attacked and he was stunned for a moment. It was at this moment that Li Lingshan's light pillar shattered the handprint and the devastating halo blasted toward the black-robed elder. The black-robed old man spat out a mouthful of blood and quickly retreated. At that moment, Li Lingtian had already retracted his eye of the divine soul and the true essence in his body erupted once again. With a flash of his body, he chased after the black-robed old man. At the same time, he continuously waved his hands, and terrifying seals condensed destructive power. Chapter 863, Blood Sword, Heavenly Extreme Tyrant Emperor Saber. Tyrannical Blade Art Desolate 10 consecutive slashes. One after another, he cast a spell, and the true essence in his entire body circulated to the limit at this time. Li Lingshan's eyes flashed like lightning as the cold voice rang out. He reached out with one hand and the celestial extreme overlord saber appeared in his hand. Suddenly, a destructive pressure appeared in the sky. The pressure of a peerless ancient divine artifact tore through the space at this moment. Just this pressure was enough to make a martial god expert tremble. As Li Lingshan's cultivation base improved, the power of the Empyrean Terminus Emperor Saber was gradually unleashed. The saber was a supreme ancient divine weapon, but he could only unleash the power of a supreme divine weapon at the moment. Even so, it was still heaven-defying enough. In the divine martial continent, a supreme-grade divine weapon was already a top-notch existence. When the Heaven Extreme Tyrant Emperor Saber appeared, the metal will in the air became even more terrifying. Li Lingshan's body burst forth with a destructive saber intent. As the saber intent appeared, he swung the Empyrean Terminus Emperor Saber in his hand. The first move of the tyrannical blade art, desolate 10 consecutive strikes, was used. 10 saber flares appeared in the air and cut the space in half. The 10 blade lights seemed to be 10, but they were actually 1. The will of the way of metal, the will of the blade, the tyrant blade art, the peerless divine weapon, all sorts of heaven-defying condensed together. Tear it. The sound of space being torn apart rang out as the attack of the heavens' extreme tyrant Emperor Saber landed in front of the black-robed elder who was retreating. The black-robed old man was attacked by the divine sense, and the short days caused him to lose the initiative. He was injured by the attack and flew back. He did not have the chance to react at all. At this time, the attack of the heavenly extreme tyrant Emperor Saber came again. Seeing that everything was about to end, the black-robed old man's eyes revealed a trace of viciousness. A blood veil appeared in front of the black-robed elder. The appearance of the blood veil made Li Lingtian feel uneasy, but it was too late. Besides, he could not retract his attack. Blood transformation technique, afterimage condensation. The black-robed old man roared, and the viciousness in his eyes disappeared. In exchange, it was anger and reluctance. As soon as he finished speaking, the blood curtain expanded, and he turned into an afterimage and disappeared. The black-robed old man was still standing in the blood veil. At the same time, the saber light of the heaven extreme tyrant Emperor Saber slashed down. Rumble. After a loud explosion, the black-robed elder was blasted into 2 halves. Finally, he turned into ashes and disappeared from the world. However, Li Lingshan's face turned pale and he did not look happy at all. Then, he forcefully moved his body, but it was already too late. This was because a restrictive force had appeared between heaven and earth, imprisoning his entire person. He could not move at all. The power of a martial god, the true power of a martial god. Blood transformation sword. At that moment, Li Lingtian felt the power of death emerge from the imprisonment. When this feeling appeared, a blood-red long sword appeared in front of him. The long sword was filled with the smell of blood. It was a long sword condensed from blood essence. If one was struck by this blood sword, even if they did not die, they would be corroded by this strange power until they died. The might of heaven and earth, the will of the 5 elements, heaven and earth as one. 8 gods heaven and earth formation, shifting stars. Li Lingshan's eyes were filled with horror when he saw the blood transformation sword approaching. However, after his shocked expression, his eyes were cold, and the 5 elements of Tao intent erupted from his entire body. At the same time, he chanted obscure incantations. Suddenly, the world changed strangely. Li Lingshan's figure disappeared from the strange confined space. The moment he disappeared, the blood sword struck him. Crash. The confined space was destroyed and finally turned into nothingness. Pfft. In the air, Li Lingshan's body fell rapidly before he finally landed on the ground and spat out a mouthful of blood. His face was deathly pale, and a bloody scar appeared on his deathly pale face. He had been cut by the blood sword, and his entire appearance was extremely embarrassing. He had just used his full strength to use stellar transposition to move himself, but he was still a little slow. The blood-transforming sword was originally aimed at his glabella, but when he moved a little and the blood-transforming sword slashed out from his cheek. The blood-transforming sword carried a strange and vicious corrosive power. It was as if the blood in Li Lingshan's body was frozen and corroded. Tong. At this moment, the black-robed old man also landed on the ground. His expression was extremely ugly. His cultivation was much weaker than before. The entire process from the first attack to now seemed to take a long time, but in fact, it had only been a moment. Li Lingshan's Empyrean Terminus Emperor Saber destroyed the black-robed elder's afterimage. The black-robed elder's afterimage was forcibly cast with his cultivation base, so his cultivation base naturally dropped. However, When Li Lingtian destroyed the black-robed elder's afterimage, the black-robed elder had already unleashed the blood transformation sword of the blood transformation grand magic. Both of their attacks were extremely dangerous, and the slightest distraction would cause them to vanish into thin air. The two of them were seriously injured. However, Li Lingtian's condition was even worse. His entire meridian was about to be sealed, and the destructive corrosive force could not be stopped. Moreover, the black-robed old man was still here, so he had no chance to heal and suppress his injuries. Damn it! Today, this venerable self must extract your soul and refine it. The black-robed old man felt his cultivation weakening, and his face was filled with anger. The appearance of the afterimages helped him block the 10 saber flares. The afterimages disappeared, and his cultivation fell from the 3rd level of the war god realm to the peak of the 2nd level. Now, she hated Li Lingtian to the bone. He wanted nothing more than to pull out Li Lingtian's tendons and skin him alive so that he would regret being born into this world. Even so, it could not make up for the drop in his cultivation. Soul extraction and soul refinement, soul extraction and soul refinement. Then I'll extract your soul and refine it. Li Lingtian stared at the black-robed elder in horror. The situation was extremely dangerous, as the bloodline in his body was being eroded continuously. He could not stop it even if he wanted to. However, when he heard the black-robed old man's words, he revealed a surprised expression. Isn't soul extraction and soul refining the soul destruction technique in the Holy Demon True Record? The blood sword was extremely vicious. The heaven and earth samsara art might not be able to suppress it, let alone remove the damage caused by the blood sword. However, if he used the true Saint Demon record and used the Saint Demon Chi to suppress the blood sword, wouldn't that work? Regardless of whether it worked or not, he had to give it a try. Moreover, in the current situation, he only had a slight chance of obtaining the Saint Demon quintessence. Go to hell. Blood Sea. The black-robed elder was enraged when he saw how arrogantly Lingtian was at this moment. He then activated the remaining vital essence in his body. Immediately, a destructive blood mist appeared between heaven and earth. In the blink of an eye, the sky was blocked by this blood mist, and it pressed down like a sea of blood. Li Lingtian felt as if he was in a sea of blood in this world. The surroundings were extremely terrifying, and the destructive stench of blood made one's stomach churn. The smell of it made one feel like vomiting. The elder in black was like a devil. When he saw Li Lingtian's state, he revealed an evil smile as if he had seen Li Lingtian being destroyed by the blood sea. Saint Demon Quintessence. Saint Devil Chi. Demonic Chi billows into the sky. Just as the black-robed elder was feeling happy, Li Lingtian's true essence vanished and was replaced by a shocking amount of demonic Chi. The demonic Chi swept across and enveloped Li Lingtian. Then, the demonic Chi burst out, and the shocking demonic Chi seemed to be about to destroy the blood sea. Within the demonic Chi, Li Lingtian had already unleashed a wisp of holy demon Chi. Together with the true demon Chi in his body, the entire demonic Chi was extremely terrifying. Rumble. Just as Li Lingtian unleashed the Saint Demon's quintessence, the blood sea in the sky descended with a destructive force. The demonic might of the demonic Chi and the pressure of the blood sea continuously collided. Then, the demonic Chi and the blood sea collided. An earth-shattering explosion erupted between heaven and earth. It was as if the world was about to be destroyed. What a terrifying battle. It should be a great battle at the 3rd level of the war god realm. If I go to such a great battle, it'll only be courting death. Not far away from the battle between the two second firmament martial god experts felt the destructive changes in the world, as well as the bloody light and demonic Chi that soared into the sky. The two of them were so frightened that their faces turned pale. After exclaiming, he did not dare to stay any longer and quickly fled into the distance. The shocking blood light and demonic Chi continuously entangled and bombarded in the air. For a moment, the demonic qi and the blood light were evenly matched. Although Li Lingtian was only at the second firmament of the Saint Realm, his holy demon qi was extremely terrifying. Even the demon god had never heard of holy demon qi. It was extremely powerful. Even though the black-clad elder was a third firmament martial god, he had forcefully unleashed the blood transformation grand magic after being attacked by Li Lingtian. His cultivation base had dropped. Although his cultivation base was more terrifying than Li Lingtian's, the blood sea was no match for the holy demon aura. The only advantage he had was his cultivation base. For a moment, the two of them unleashed their power and waited for the final victory. However, at this moment, the demonic qi underwent a strange change. Tyrant Demon Dragon Kill. The endless and terrifying demonic qi only fought with the blood sea in terms of power at the beginning. It did not have any divine powers at all. However, when Li Lingtian unleashed the divine power of the Saint Demon's quintessence, the endless demonic qi transformed into a demonic dragon and charged toward the black-robed elder. The shocking demonic dragon caused the entire ground to crack. Space shattered inch by inch like a broken mirror. The power of the war god, invincible defense. The black-robed old man was also shocked by this change. The reaction of a martial god expert was extremely agile. Looking at the terrifying demonic dragon, he hurriedly displayed the innate defense of a martial god expert. Suddenly, a mysterious halo appeared, blocking the endless demonic dragons. Although the halo was shaking, it could not be broken by the mystic dragon. Li Lingtian was utterly shocked when he saw this. A martial god powerhouse was indeed powerful and he could not compare to him. Thinking of this, a hint of determination appeared in his eyes. He waved his hand and a banner appeared in his hand. His figure disappeared instantly, completely disappearing from this space. There was no aura or spatial fluctuation, as if he had never appeared. The shocking demonic qi disappeared, and the blood light lost its opponent, trembling strangely. When the last demonic dragon struck the black-robed old man's body, the black-robed old man's defense was broken. Chapter 864, Blood Sword, Heavenly Extreme Tyrant Emperor Saber. Tyrannical Blade Art Desolate 10 consecutive slashes. One after another, he cast a spell, and the true essence in his entire body circulated to the limit at this time. Li Lingtian's eyes flashed like lightning as the cold voice rang out. He reached out with one hand and the celestial extreme overlord saber appeared in his hand. Suddenly, a destructive pressure appeared in the sky. The pressure of a peerless ancient divine artifact tore through the space at this moment. Just this pressure was enough to make a martial god expert tremble. As Li Lingtian's cultivation base improved, the power of the Empyrean Terminus Emperor Saber was gradually unleashed. The saber was a supreme ancient divine weapon, but he could only unleash the power of a supreme divine weapon at the moment. Even so, it was still heaven-defying enough. In the divine martial continent, a supreme-grade divine weapon was already a top-notch existence. When the Heaven Extreme Tyrant Emperor Saber appeared, the metal will in the air became even more terrifying. Li Lingtian's body burst forth with a destructive saber intent. As the saber intent appeared, he swung the Empyrean Terminus Emperor Saber in his hand. The first move of the tyrannical blade art, Desolate 10 consecutive strikes, was used. 10 saber flares appeared in the air and cut the space in half. The 10 blade lights seemed to be 10, but they were actually 1. The will of the way of metal, the will of the blade, the tyrant blade art, the peerless divine weapon, all sorts of heaven-defying condensed together. Tear it. The sound of space being torn apart rang out as the attack of the heavens extreme tyrant Emperor Saber landed in front of the black-robed elder who was retreating. The black-robed old man was attacked by the divine sense, and the short days caused him to lose the initiative. He was injured by the attack and flew back. He did not have the chance to react at all. At this time, the attack of the heavenly extreme tyrant Emperor Saber came again. Seeing that everything was about to end, the black-robed old man's eyes revealed a trace of viciousness. A blood veil appeared in front of the black-robed elder. The appearance of the blood veil made Li Lingtian feel uneasy, but it was too late. Besides, he could not retract his attack. Blood transformation technique, afterimage condensation. The black-robed old man roared, and the viciousness in his eyes disappeared. In exchange, it was anger and reluctance. As soon as he finished speaking, the blood curtain expanded, and he turned into an afterimage and disappeared. The black-robed old man was still standing in the blood veil. At the same time, the saber light of the Heaven Extreme Tyrant Emperor Saber slashed down. Rumble. After a loud explosion, the black-robed elder was blasted into two halves. Finally, he turned into ashes and disappeared from the world. However, Li Lingtian's face turned pale and he did not look happy at all. Then, he forcefully moved his body, but it was already too late. This was because a restrictive force had appeared between heaven and earth, imprisoning his entire person. He could not move at all. The power of a martial god, the true power of a martial god. Blood transformation sword. At that moment, Li Lingtian felt the power of death emerge from the imprisonment. When this feeling appeared, a blood-red long sword appeared in front of him. The long sword was filled with the smell of blood. It was a long sword condensed from blood essence. If one was struck by this blood sword, even if they did not die, they would be corroded by this strange power until they died. The might of heaven and earth, the will of the five elements, heaven and earth as one. 8 gods, heaven and earth formation, shifting stars. Li Lingtian's eyes were filled with horror when he saw the blood transformation sword approaching. However, after his shocked expression, his eyes were cold, and the 5 elements of Tao intent erupted from his entire body. At the same time, he chanted obscure incantations. Suddenly, the world changed strangely. Li Lingtian's figure disappeared from the strange confined space. The moment he disappeared, the blood sword struck him. Crash. The confined space was destroyed and finally turned into nothingness. Pfft. In the air, Li Lingtian's body fell rapidly before he finally landed on the ground and spat out a mouthful of blood. His face was deathly pale, and a bloody scar appeared on his deathly pale face. He had been cut by the blood sword, and his entire appearance was extremely embarrassing. He had just used his full strength to use stellar transposition to move himself, but he was still a little slow. The blood-transforming sword was originally aimed at his glabella, but when he moved a little and the blood-transforming sword slashed out from his cheek. The blood-transforming sword carried a strange and vicious corrosive power. It was as if the blood in Li Lingtian's body was frozen and corroded. Tong. At this moment, the black-robed old man also landed on the ground. His expression was extremely ugly. His cultivation was much weaker than before. The entire process from the first attack to now seemed to take a long time, but in fact, it had only been a moment. Li Lingtian's Empyrean Terminus Emperor Saber destroyed the black-robed elder's afterimage. The black-robed elder's afterimage was forcibly cast with his cultivation base, so his cultivation base naturally dropped. However, when Li Lingtian destroyed the black-robed elder's afterimage, the black-robed elder had already unleashed the blood transformation sword of the blood transformation grand magic. Both of their attacks were extremely dangerous and the slightest distraction would cause them to vanish into thin air. The two of them were seriously injured. However, Li Lingtian's condition was even worse. His entire meridian was about to be sealed and the destructive corrosive force could not be stopped. Moreover, the black-robed old man was still here, so he had no chance to heal and suppress his injuries. Damn it! Today, this venerable self must extract your soul and refine it. The black-robed old man felt his cultivation weakening, and his face was filled with anger. The appearance of the afterimages helped him block the 10 saber flares. The afterimages disappeared and his cultivation fell from the third level of the war god realm to the peak of the second level. Now, she hated Li Lingtian to the bone. He wanted nothing more than to pull out Li Lingshan's tendons and skin him alive so that he would regret being born into this world. Even so, it could not make up for the drop in his cultivation. Soul extraction and soul refinement, soul extraction and soul refinement. Then I'll extract your soul and refine it. Li Lingtian stared at the black-robed elder in horror. The situation was extremely dangerous as the bloodline in his body was being eroded continuously. He could not stop it even if he wanted to. However, when he heard the black-robed old man's words, he revealed a surprised expression. Isn't soul extraction and soul refining the soul destruction technique in the holy demon true record? The blood sword was extremely vicious. The heaven and earth samsara art might not be able to suppress it, let alone remove the damage caused by the blood sword. However, if he used the true saint demon record and used the saint demon chi to suppress the blood sword, wouldn't that work? Regardless of whether it worked or not, he had to give it a try. Moreover, in the current situation, he only had a slight chance of obtaining the saint demon quintessence. Go to hell. Blood Sea. The black-robed elder was enraged when he saw how arrogantly Lingtian was at this moment. He then activated the remaining vital essence in his body. Immediately, a destructive blood mist appeared between heaven and earth. In the blink of an eye, the sky was blocked by this blood mist, and it pressed down like a sea of blood. Li Lingtian felt as if he was in a sea of blood in this world. The surroundings were extremely terrifying and the destructive stench of blood made one's stomach churn. The smell of it made one feel like vomiting. The elder in black was like a devil. When he saw Li Lingshan's state, he revealed an evil smile as if he had seen Li Lingtian being destroyed by the blood sea. Saint Demon Quintessence. Saint Devil Chi. Demonic Chi billows into the sky. Just as the black-robed elder was feeling happy, Li Lingshan's true essence vanished and was replaced by a shocking amount of demonic chi. The demonic chi swept across and enveloped Li Lingtian. Then, the demonic chi burst out and the shocking demonic chi seemed to be about to destroy the blood sea. Within the demonic chi, Li Lingtian had already unleashed a wisp of holy demon chi. Together with the true demon chi in his body, the entire demonic chi was extremely terrifying. Rumble. Just as Li Lingtian unleashed the saint demon's quintessence, the blood sea in the sky descended with a destructive force. The demonic might of the demonic chi and the pressure of the blood sea continuously collided. Then, the demonic chi and the blood sea collided. An earth-shattering explosion erupted between heaven and earth. It was as if the world was about to be destroyed. What a terrifying battle. It should be a great battle at the third level of the war god realm. If I go to such a great battle, it'll only be courting death. Not far away from the battle between the two second firmament martial god experts felt the destructive changes in the world, as well as the bloody light and demonic chi that soared into the sky. The two of them were so frightened that their faces turned pale. After exclaiming, he did not dare to stay any longer and quickly fled into the distance. The shocking blood light and demonic chi continuously entangled and bombarded in the air. For a moment, the demonic chi and the blood light were evenly matched. Although Li Lingtian was only at the second firmament of the saint realm, his holy demon chi was extremely terrifying. Even the demon god had never heard of holy demon chi. It was extremely powerful. Even though the black-clad elder was a third firmament martial god, he had forcefully unleashed the blood transformation grand magic after being attacked by Li Lingtian. His cultivation base had dropped. Although his cultivation base was more terrifying than Li Lingshan's, the blood sea was no match for the holy demon aura. The only advantage he had was his cultivation base. For a moment, the two of them unleashed their power and waited for the final victory. However, at this moment, the demonic chi underwent a strange change. Tyrant Demon Dragon Kill. The endless and terrifying demonic Qi only fought with the Blood Sea in terms of power at the beginning. It did not have any divine powers at all. However, when Li Ling Tian unleashed the divine power of the Saint Demon's quintessence, the endless demonic Qi transformed into a demonic dragon and charged toward the black-robed elder. The shocking demonic dragon caused the entire ground to crack. Space shattered inch by inch like a broken mirror. The power of the war god, invincible defense. The black-robed old man was also shocked by this change. The reaction of a martial god expert was extremely agile. Looking at the terrifying demonic dragon, he hurriedly displayed the innate defense of a martial god expert. Suddenly, a mysterious halo appeared, blocking the endless demonic dragons. Although the halo was shaking, it could not be broken by the mystic dragon. Li Ling Tian was utterly shocked when he saw this. A martial god powerhouse was indeed powerful and he could not compare to him. Thinking of this, a hint of determination appeared in his eyes. He waved his hand and a banner appeared in his hand. His figure disappeared instantly, completely disappearing from this space. There was no aura or spatial fluctuation, as if he had never appeared. The shocking demonic Qi disappeared, and the blood light lost its opponent, trembling strangely. When the last demonic dragon struck the black-robed old man's body, the black-robed old man's defense was broken. Chapter 865, The Qin Palace of the Nine Palaces. This is the Qian Palace of the Xiaoyao Immortal Palace. We were teleported randomly after we came in. We've been here for almost 2 days, but we haven't met Sister Shui and Lin Zhirong. Li Ling Tian glanced at Huangfu Yuyan and the rest. After a moment of silence, he recounted everything that had happened since he entered the place. Hearing this, Huangfu Yuyan and the others were shocked and worried about Bei Mingsu's safety. In this place, the cultivation of a first-level war god was not considered strong at all. If they encountered an enemy, they could only flee. If they encountered a third-level war god, there was very little chance of escaping. However, there was nothing he could do about it. Entering this place was random. No one could change this random teleportation. Now, he could only depend on luck. If he was lucky, he would be able to meet Bei Mingxue. It also depended on Bei Mingxue's fate. Hopefully, she wouldn't encounter any of the dozen or so level 3 martial gods. If she encountered other experts, she could easily escape. It's only been 2 days. It's still early. Besides, with Sister Shui's cultivation, even an ordinary second-level martial god might not be a match for her. If she were to encounter a third-level martial god, she might have a chance of escaping. Because she has a mystical treasure in her hands that allows her to fly silently. Yun Yaoyao was slightly relieved when she heard that Li Ling Tian and the others had only been here for 2 days. She knew Bei Mingxu's cultivation the best. Ordinary martial god experts were no match for her. Moreover, this Xiaoyao Immortal Palace was vast and boundless. As long as they did not cause trouble, they would not encounter any experts. Even if he encountered a strong expert, he could still escape. That's the best. Oh right, you said you obtained the Qian Palace fragment? Huangfu Yuyan and the rest were slightly relieved after hearing that. They then recalled the Qian Palace they were in and heard Li Ling Tian mention it before asking curiously. That's right. I did obtain a fragment. It should be a part of a complete item. What's more, I'm speechless. I've obtained the will of the Great Path of Water from this fragment, which makes me feel confused about the will of the Great Path of Water, as if something is missing. Li Ling Tian nodded before he took out the fragment he had obtained and handed it to Huangfu Yuyan. He recounted what he had encountered, and his expression was somewhat speechless. He had never thought of such a thing. He had never thought that such a situation would occur one day when he cultivated the will of the Great Path of Water. The will of the 5 elements had also become somewhat unbalanced because of the will of the water. Huangfu Yuyan and the others looked at the fragment but could not recognize it. In fact, Li Lingtian understood that the fragment was related to the Array Dao. If he, an Array Dao powerhouse who was infinitely close to a divine Array master, did not know about it, Huangfu Yuyan and the rest would naturally not be able to recognize it. Looking at this fragment, it should be a formation. Moreover, it's a part of an array formation. If all of them are gathered together, a powerful array formation or a powerful existence will appear. It's just that we don't know yet. Tang Qingyue said softly as she handed the fragment to Li Lingtian. She looked at him with her beautiful eyes. The other girls nodded in agreement. You guys rest here first. After we rest for 2 days, we'll go out and look for Sister Shui. I'll study this fragment properly and see what's going on here. Li Lingtian said to Tang Qingyue and the others after he kept the fragment. Then, Tang Qingyue and the others rested and played in the palace. Li Lingtian had set up a formation in the palace. Although it was not large, there were several side halls of different sizes. The spirit qi inside was rich and suitable for cultivation. Li Lingtian left the palace after giving his instructions. When he arrived outside the palace, he looked at the black-robed old man on the ground. He was already dead. It seemed like he had destroyed him with his first strike. He waved his hand, and a bag of holding appeared in his hand. At the same time, the command medallion was withdrawn. A streak of raging flames turned the black-robed elder's corpse into ashes. In the end, it completely dissipated and disappeared from this world. After doing everything, he felt a little more at ease. Next, he cast more than 10 formations outside, instantly disappearing the palace and hiding it in the air. Without a powerful array master, they wouldn't have discovered that there was a palace in this place. Even if an array master were to come, it would not be easy for them to break Li Lingtian's array. After all, Li Lingtian's array cultivation was infinitely close to that of a divine array master. Any array he cast could turn something rotten into something magical. After returning to the palace, he looked around the palace again, but he still did not find anything else. After sizing them up, he found a random room in the palace where Tang Qingyue and the others were resting and began to comprehend the array Dao of the 9 temples. His array Dao cultivation was infinitely close to that of a divine array master. When he came here, he felt that this place was somewhat familiar and unfamiliar. When he thought of the array formation with the 99 tokens, he was instantly shocked. The Qian Palace here and the water wheel in the Qian Palace happened to be the Qian Palace and the Qin Palace of the 9 temples. Now that he was in the Qian Palace, which was northwest, the Qin Palace should be in the north. The Qin Palace was also of the water element, and the Qin was 1, while the Qian was 6. His current position was in the 6th Qian Palace of the 9 palaces, which was the closest to the first Qin Palace. As long as he found the direction to the north, he would be able to find the first Qin Palace. At the thought of this, he was already somewhat certain in his heart. Immediately, he quickly cultivated using immortal spiritual energy. Only true essence that was recovered from cultivation was the most useful. After a day, Li Lingtian proposed to search for Qin's first palace. Because only by finding the first Qin Palace would he be able to gain some initiative. Huangfu Yuyan felt that Li Lingtian's suggestion was reliable. After all, Li Lingtian's array master's words made sense. Huangfu Yuyan and the others stayed outside. Including Li Lingtian, there were 7 of them. Xianyuan Yingying, Huangfu Yuyan, Tang Qingyue, Shen Mei Tang Zimeng, Qing Ling, and Li Lingtian flew close to the ground. They would only stop to collect precious herbs when they encountered them. They would give up on the rest. An ancient compass appeared in Li Lingtian's hand. The compass was green in color and emitted a faint spirit qi. It looked extremely mysterious. Following the guidance of the compass, he quickly flew north and spread out his divine sense to pay attention to the surrounding movements. In the palace, more than 90 experts were scattered and randomly landed in different places. Feeling the rich immortal spiritual energy, all the experts were extremely shocked, but their faces were also extremely excited. The denser the spiritual energy here, the better the treasures here. As expected of the Xiaoyao Immortal Palace. Only in such a place could there be mysterious treasures, demon beasts, and precious medicinal herbs. What puzzled all the experts was that there were no demon beasts here. It's really here. I didn't expect to find this place so quickly. Above a lake, a huge palace floated. The palace was as green as jade, and waves of dense immortal spiritual energy spread out, making this palace seem extremely mysterious. A figure descended. After the figure appeared, a grey-robed second firmament martial god stood on the ground. He held a compass in one hand and a jade slip in the other. Looking at the palace in front of him, his face revealed an excited expression. It was as if he had seen a treasure. However, at this moment, he frowned and the expression on his face became extremely vicious. In his divine sense, two figures flew over at an extremely fast speed. In the blink of an eye, they appeared in his sight. The two figures came from completely different directions. They were obviously not on the same path. Seeing the two figures, the expression on this second firmament war god's face became grave. This was because the people who had arrived were a second-level martial god and a first-level martial god. If they encountered such opponents in this place, there would naturally be a great battle. When the two of them arrived and saw that someone had already arrived, they both exclaimed in surprise. At the same time, their faces revealed a solemn and serious expression. They looked at the Green Palace with excitement and greed. Xiaoyao Immortal Palace. Yes, Patriarch is right. The First Kan Palace is indeed above the lake. I, Yang Xiaoyao, have made the right decision to come here. A faint smile appeared on Yang Xiaoyao's face. He glanced at the second heaven of the war god realm not far away. When he looked at the first heaven of the war god realm, the smile on his face turned into disdain. He was a second firmament war god expert, so he naturally did not take the first firmament war god seriously. However, it would indeed take some effort to deal with the second firmament war god on the other side. You want the things in the First Kan Palace? You think you can do that? I advise you to leave quickly. Otherwise, I won't be polite. Qian Tu looked at Yang Xiaoyao's arrogant appearance and revealed a disdainful expression. They were both at the second sky of the martial god realm. Even if Yang Xiaoyao's cultivation was deeper than his, it was impossible for him to easily obtain the treasures here. The conversation between the two completely ignored that first firmament war god. In a world where the strong were respected, each level was a world. The second level of the war god realm naturally looked down on the first level of the war god realm. Ignorant. At this moment, a cold voice sounded in the air. The voice was like a powerhouse from the upper realm examining all living beings. The sound was extremely strange. There was no movement in the space, as if the owner of the sound had always been here. The three martial god experts were all shocked. One more expert meant one more competition. This expert who had not appeared was definitely not so simple. They were all looking at the sky, waiting for the arrival of this expert. At the same time, the true essence in their bodies had already started to circulate. Swoosh swoosh swoosh. Rumble. Before the experts could appear, they were greeted with a world-destroying pressure. The pressure was extremely terrifying, as if it wanted to squeeze this space to explode. The air also began to distort, and muffled sounds rang out continuously. The entire air was extremely oppressive. In the blink of an eye, the destructive pressure enveloped the three martial god powerhouses. Chapter 866, Cloudy Mountain Boy, 1, a third firmament war god expert. Sensing the destructive pressure, the three of them understood that the person who had come was definitely a third firmament war god. There were 2 second firmament war gods and 1 first firmament war god here. The only powerhouse who could suppress all 3 of them was the 3rd firmament war god. The arrival of a 3rd firmament war god was definitely not a good thing. Let's join forces. Otherwise, we won't even have a chance to escape. Qian Tu looked at Yang Xiaoyao and the other martial god and said loudly. His expression was extremely anxious. If they were to die here without even seeing any treasures, it would be a real injustice. He didn't want to die here. The higher his cultivation base was, the longer his lifespan was, and the more afraid he was of death. After all, he had spent his entire life cultivating, and it wasn't easy for him to reach such a cultivation base. He didn't want to die before he could enjoy it. Join hands? Escape? Not even a 3rd firmament war god can kill me. Yang Xiaoyao's face revealed a look of disdain, but he still nodded and agreed to join forces. If a few people could bear the danger, why should one person bear it? He thought to himself. With his cultivation and strength, even if he encountered a 3rd-level war god, he might not be defeated by the other party. Alright, let's join forces. The first firmament martial god was called Hongyu. His cultivation was the lowest. If they did not join forces in this place, he would be the first to die. Rumble. The 3 of them looked at each other and released a destructive pressure at the same time. Even if the 3 martial god powerhouses could not compare to the 3rd level of the martial god realm, their pressure was still earth-shattering when they joined forces. In the air, a series of explosions sounded. The earth trembled, but the expert in the sky did not appear. The pressure of the 3 people working together barely blocked the pressure in the air. For a moment, there was no way to determine the winner. Come out. At this moment, Yang Xiaoyao roared and the pressure on his body surged into the sky. Space was torn apart by this pressure. Qian Tu and Hongyu's pressure was pushed away. At this moment, their pressure could only protect themselves. The expert hiding in the air exclaimed in surprise. Immediately, the destructive pressure collided, and a crack appeared in space. A short old man appeared in their line of sight. Cloud Mountain Boy. When the 3 of them saw the short old man in the air, they were extremely shocked and exclaimed at the same time. The old man in the air was no more than 4 feet tall. His face was extremely red, but his hair was white. The aura and temperament on his body did not make him look like a child because of his red cheeks. Instead, he was a complete old man. At the same time, the destructive aura on his body was not something that a child could possess. This old man was Cloud Mountain Boy, a powerhouse of the divine continent. He was already more than 1,000 years old. When he was young, he was harmed by a poison. He never grew tall and was forever like a child. However, Cloudy Mountain Boy was extremely talented and his cultivation speed was extremely fast. He could be said to be the number 1 genius in the sect for 1,000 years. In a few hundred years, he became the sect master of Cloudy Mountain Sect, so he was called Cloudy Mountain Boy by other experts. Cloudy Mountain Boy was quite famous. He was good at plucking yin to nourish yang, and his cultivation technique was close to the crooked path. However, not many people dared to provoke him. Some female cultivators' expressions changed when they heard about Cloudy Mountain Boy. This was because the Cloud Mountain Boy liked women and played with beautiful women. He took the female's primordial yin to increase his cultivation, and the women who were plucked were not human. This Cloudy Mountain Boy was not only feared by women, but also by men. His strength was extremely terrifying and his methods were incomparably vicious. Basically, no one could escape from the experts in front of him. At this moment, Yang Xiaoyao also felt fear. The confidence he had earlier was shaken by the appearance of Cloudy Mountain Boy. Yang Xiaoyao, Qian Tu, and Hongyu were the same. The 3 of them were shocked and gradually approached. Hee hee, 3 little shrimps are here. Since you're here, then stay here forever. When Cloudy Mountain Boy saw Yang Xiaoyao and the other two's expressions, his face immediately revealed a sinister smile. Someone was trembling in front of him, so naturally, he felt extremely pleased. In front of him, no one had ever been able to escape. Unless it was an expert of the same level or an even more powerful high-level expert. However, this Cloudy Mountain Boy would become like a kitten when he encountered an expert stronger than him. He would bully the weak and fear the strong. Child Yunshan, could it be that you want to kill the three of us? Yang Xiaoyao looked at Cloudy Mountain Boy and felt the destructive pressure. The expression on his face changed several times. As he spoke, he brought Qian Tu and Hong Yu in as well. He had no confidence in escaping alone. Even if he died, he would drag the two people beside him down with him. Humph, you're just a small fry. How dare you be so arrogant in front of me? You're courting death. Have you ever seen anyone run away from me? Cloudy Mountain Boy's expression was slightly angry, and his aura skyrocketed. He stretched out a hand, and a round plate appeared in his hand. The golden round plate emitted a destructive aura. Ding! With a soft sound, the round plate suddenly exploded with a ray of light. The ray of light split into three and flew towards the three of them regardless of the distance. 3 cracks were also drawn in the air, and it arrived in front of the 3 of them in an instant. The 3 rays of light carried a destructive pressure that locked onto Yang Xiaoyao and the other 2. Breeze Sword. Great Divine Finger. Golden Light Explosive Fist. Seeing that Cloudy Mountain Boy had attacked without giving anyone a chance and was extremely ruthless, he was shocked. The terrifying light instantly appeared in front of them. The 3 of them no longer dared to hesitate and subconsciously unleashed powerful attacks. Facing such a powerful light attack, they did not dare to use defense to block it at all. They could only use offense to defend. Rumble. 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 Pft. Ah. Immediately, 3 destructive sounds erupted in the air. At the same time, the sound of blood spurting out appeared, followed by a miserable cry. A miserable cry resounded through the world as a figure was thrown out. With a single strike, the first level of the martial god realm, Rainbow Yu, fell. Yang Xiaoyao and Qian Tu also retreated rapidly. There were traces of blood at the corners of their mouths, and their faces were pale. Several bloody wounds appeared on his body, and he looked extremely ugly. When a third firmament martial god expert attacked, even 3 martial god experts would not be able to withstand it. One of the martial god experts was killed, and the other 2 were injured. Golden Butterfly Double Shadow. Cloudy Mountain Boy was not satisfied at all when he saw that only one of the 3 martial gods had died. He moved his divine sense and waved his finger. Immediately, 3 rays of light flashed in the air and quickly bombarded the 2 second firmament martial gods. Sword Talisman, sword light filling the sky. Myriad swords returned to the origin. At this moment, Yang Xiaoyao's expression was extremely solemn. He pointed at his glabella with one hand and a fluorescent light appeared in the air. The fluorescent light spun in the air and then shot toward the 3 rays of light. After this light appeared, Cloudy Mountain Child and Qian Tu were extremely shocked, but they did not have the chance to be shocked at this time. This was because this silver light was a sword talisman, a super overbearing divine level sword talisman. Right after the sword talisman appeared, Yang Xiaoyao stretched out his hands and cast a spell seal. Instantly, tens of thousands of sharp swords appeared in the air. The sharp swords formed a world of swords with him as the center. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. Huff, huff, huff. Over 10,000 sharp swords spun in the air, forming a magical sword formation. In the divine martial continent, a sword formation was definitely a heaven-defying existence. The power of the earth, earth-shattering. Seeing that Yang Xiaoyao had already used his most powerful technique, Qian Tu did not dare to hesitate anymore. He used his natal cultivation technique, and the ground instantly trembled and turned the world upside down. The golden butterfly continued to attack the two of them, and the world continued to collapse. It's the myriad returning swords. I didn't expect to encounter the myriad returning swords here. Could it be his successor? In the distant sky, several voices were flying quickly toward the lake. Among the figures, there were 6 peerless girls, and in the middle was a young man who looked extremely carefree. However, when he sensed the sword chi in the distance, his expression changed drastically. It was as if he had seen a ghost because the sword chi was emitted by the myriad returning swords. He did not expect that someone in the divine martial continent could cultivate the myriad returning swords. You know him? Huangfu Yuyan asked curiously when she heard Li Lingtian muttering to himself. I don't know him. When we returned to Qingzhou last time, we met your grandfather. He said that we should be careful of a person called Sword Prince. Because there's an extremely powerful force in this divine continent that specializes in sword arts. I suspect that the person in front is from that faction. Even if he isn't the Sword Prince, he isn't simple either. Li Lingtian spoke in a serious tone. The Holy Wind Martial Saint had mentioned that person in a serious manner. A person who could make the Holy Wind Martial Saint so fearful was definitely not simple. Moreover, an expert who could cultivate a sword array was definitely a heaven-defying person. It was just that he did not know how powerful the Sword Prince was to actually have such a title. At that time, he would definitely go and meet this sword young master and see how powerful he was. Looks like the Ken Palace is up ahead. Tang Qingyue said after hearing Li Lingshan's words. Li Lingtian looked at the compass and nodded. He then led the 6 girls and flew forward quickly. He arrived in the air in front of the palace and watched the battle between 2 second-level war gods and a 3rd-level war god. His expression changed several times. The strength of a 3rd firmament war god was as powerful and terrifying as ever. Even in front of the myriad returning swords, he was not at a disadvantage. On the other hand, although the expert who used the myriad returning swords had a powerful cultivation, he did not completely control the myriad returning swords. Otherwise, it would not have ended up like this. Li Lingtian could only smile bitterly at the thought. If he were a martial god, he would definitely be able to kill a 3rd firmament martial god in an instant with the myriad returning swords. The arrival of this group of people was also noticed by the 3 experts who were engaged in the battle. However, they were surprised to see that Li Lingtian and the rest were low-level powerhouses and did not take them seriously at all. He ignored Li Lingtian and the others. However, Cloudy Mountain Boy kept scanning Tang Qingyue and the others with his divine perception. His face revealed an evil smile that made Tang Qingyue and the others feel disgusted. Chapter 867, Sword Dao 1. Li Lingtian had witnessed the battle and his killing intent was already on the shorty. Dragons had reverse scales, and their reverse scales were their family and wife. To think that someone would look at Huangfu Yuyan and the others with such a gaze. They were simply courting death. However, he wouldn't touch him now. He would kill him in one strike after his true essence was exhausted by the 2 second firmament martial gods. There was no need for him to be angry at trash like this. Moreover, this shorty was a super powerhouse at the 3rd level of the martial god realm. His strength could not be ignored. Since there were powerhouses fighting, he couldn't wait for the other party to suffer heavy losses. Rumble. Golden Butterfly continued to attack the 2 second sky martial god realm experts. With a loud explosion, the myriad returning sword formation was destroyed, and tens of thousands of sharp swords scattered in all directions. Yang Xiaoyao was also blasted away. His expression became extremely solemn. He did not expect his trump card to be broken by the other party. It must be known that ordinary experts, even those at the 3rd sky of the martial god realm, would be at a disadvantage in front of the myriad returning swords. However, they had never expected that this Cloudy Mountain child's golden butterfly would be so domineering. Bang! With another muffled sound, Yang Xiaoyao was sent flying. Qian Tu alone could not withstand Cloudy Mountain Boy's attack at all. He flew out and spat out a mouthful of blood. Hee, in front of me, any sword Dao is trash. Cloudy Mountain Boy looked at Yang Xiaoyao's 10,000 swords with disdain. A while ago, he had suffered a loss in front of Sword Xiu. This was also the first time he had suffered a loss. Now, seeing experts who used swords as weapons would anger him. Humph, Cloudy Mountain Boy, is the sword of my senior brother, Mr. Divine Sword, still trembling now? Yang Xiaoyao was furious when he heard that Cloudy Mountain Boy had insulted a swordsman. He thought back to 30 years ago when Cloudy Mountain Boy was extremely powerful. However, in front of Sword Young Master, he had almost vanished into thin air. If he hadn't used a secret technique to escape, Cloudy Mountain Boy would have definitely disappeared under that strike. Now that he mentioned Cloudy Mountain Boy's sore spot, Yang Xiaoyao's face revealed an excited smile. He circulated all the true essence in his body to the extreme, and a long sword appeared in his hand. His entire aura turned into sword intent, and the air was ravaged by the sword intent. Damn it! Young Master Shen Jian is a 5th firmament martial god expert and one of the 10 great young masters of the Divine Continent. If it weren't for the fact that his cultivation base is higher than mine, he wouldn't be able to defeat me with his sword. Do you think he defeated me in the Tao of the Sword? Huh, what a joke. There's no sword principle in this world. It's just that your Divine Sword sect has made it sound so mysterious. When Cloudy Mountain Boy heard about Sword Young Master, he revealed a fearful expression. He looked around and was subconsciously stunned. He was afraid of Sword Young Master from the bottom of his heart. The power of that sword could be said to be able to destroy the world. Even he, Cloudy Mountain Boy, had almost disappeared into thin air. Now that he thought about it, his heart still trembled. The magnificence of that sword strike had left a shadow in his heart forever. Otherwise, he would have broken through to the 4th firmament of the war god realm long ago. Hearing Yang Xiaoyao use Sword Prince to scare him and poke at his sore spot, he was instantly enraged. If you say you don't have a sword path, then let's try my spiritual sword. At this moment, Yang Xiaoyao had already unleashed all the sword intent in his body. The destructive sword intent wreaked havoc in the space. With a wave of his hand, a massive sword light shot toward the boy with a tearing force. The space trembled, and the sound was shocking. However, Huangfu Yuyan and the others saw Li Lingtian shake his head with disdain. Immediately, the girls understood that Li Lingtian disdained Yang Xiaoyao's sword intent. He was not a swordsman at all. Such a move might look powerful, but it was useless. As expected, the shocking sword light tore through the space and fiercely bombarded little boy Yunshan. The sword light split the space into 2 halves with a shocking momentum, causing the expression on Cloudy Mountain Child's face to turn ugly. With a flick of his finger, a stream of blood essence flew out and entered the golden butterfly. Immediately, the golden butterfly exploded with a dazzling golden light that welcomed the sword energy. Kacha! Kacha! Boom! Pft! A cracking sound rang out in the air, as if space had been torn apart. After 2 cracking sounds, the sword light disappeared, and the golden light disappeared. Yang Xiaoyao was ruthlessly bombarded. He spat out a mouthful of blood, and his sword fell to the ground. His body swayed as he landed on the ground. The sword will on his body disappeared, and home of heaven and earth fell silent. The 2 second firmament war gods stood at the side, and their eyes revealed terrified expressions. They looked at Cloudy Mountain Boy without moving. However, Cloudy Mountain Boy's gaze was directed at Li Lingtian. When he saw Huangfu Yuyan and the rest of the peerless beauties, his eyes shone with an evil glint. "Junior, you can scram now." Leave these girls behind, and the group will let you go. The few of you will follow me from now on. In the future, I will let you enjoy endless glory and wealth. Cloudy Mountain Boy stared at Tang Qingyue and the others, his eyes wide. He had been a womanizer in his life and had met countless women. He had seen all kinds of top-grade women, but he had never seen such a peerless beauty. Every one of them was rare in the world. He did not expect so many people to gather at once. This was simply heaven. For a moment, Cloud Mountain Boy regarded the 6 girls as goddesses of the 9 heavens. Get lost. Li Ling Tian looked at Cloudy Mountain Boy with a world of ice on one side and a world of flames on the other. 2 balls of destructive light were actually in his eyes. This gaze immediately made Cloudy Mountain Boy tremble. The cold voice sounded as if it came from hell. His voice carried a hint of dignity, a dignity that could not be easily offended. Junior, you are courting death. Cloudy Mountain Boy did not expect a martial saint powerhouse to be so arrogant in front of him. Even though he had seen Li Ling Tian earn so many spiritual stones a few days ago, he did not think that it was Li Ling Tian who earned it because Li Ling Tian had people from the Baiming and Lin families by his side. Now that the Lin family and Baiming family were no longer around, they naturally would not be afraid of a second Sky Martial Saint Jr. As long as he eliminated this junior, he would be able to obtain astonishing wealth and these few beauties. He didn't even think about the background of these girls. As soon as he finished speaking, a destructive pressure came crashing down on Li Ling Tian. For a second Sky of the Martial Saint realm, he only needed a wave of pressure to crush him to death. It was only by crushing Li Ling Tian like this that he could show off his tall image in front of the beauties. However, he did not know that he was not tall at all despite being only 4 feet tall. Heavenly Demon Region, the might of heaven and earth. Li Ling Tian found it funny when he saw Cloudy Mountain Boy suppressing him with his pressure. Immediately, the Heavenly Demon Region was unleashed. A shocking power of heaven and earth erupted, and a shocking pressure bombarded the pressure of Child Yunshan. Rumble. The pressure was formless, but the martial god expert could see it clearly. The destructive power of heaven and earth directly offset the pressure of Cloudy Mountain Boy. Li Lingshan's power of heaven and earth was extremely terrifying to begin with. Even a martial god powerhouse could not compare to it. Furthermore, Cloudy Mountain Boy did not use his full strength. With just one strike, he was at a disadvantage. His body was thrown backward, and his expression was extremely ugly. Yang Xiaoyao and Qian Tu were both shocked by this situation. They did not expect Li Ling Tian to be so powerful that he could defeat Cloudy Mountain Boy, a 3rd firmament martial god, with his pressure. It should be noted that the trio had failed to resist Cloudy Mountain Boy's pressure when they joined forces. Li Ling Tian was a 2nd firmament martial saint. Without Lin Jirong and Bei Mingshu's protection, he was actually this terrifying. If they were to defeat Cloudy Mountain Boy with their pressure, the gap between them and Li Ling Tian would be too great to be described. Are you a swordsman? Li Ling Tian used his pressure to repel Cloudy Mountain Boy. He then looked at Yang Xiaoyao with a calm expression and a smile on his face. Just now, this Cloud Mountain Boy was careless and was easily repelled. He had already defeated the other party psychologically. Now, as long as he provoked him, he had some confidence in defeating him. That's right, I'm a sword cultivator. Yang Xiaoyao was puzzled by Li Lingshan's question. He did not give a single answer, but he felt a tinge of anger in his heart after he answered. Li Lingshan's words clearly showed that he was doubting his identity. For a sword cultivator to be suspected of being fake was a blow to his sword cultivation. Swordsman? If Sword Young Master was here, perhaps he would dare to call himself a sword cultivator. In front of me, Sword Young Master doesn't deserve to call himself a sword cultivator. You'll know in the future whether there's a sword Dao in this world. I'll show you what a sword Dao is. Li Lingshan's tone was one of denial before he burst out laughing. He looked at Yang Xiaoyao indifferently and said coldly. His voice was like a sharp sword that pierced straight into his heart. As a sword principle expert, he could feel Li Lingshan's terror. This terror came from his sword, a terrifying sword. Yang Xiaoyao was furious. His hatred for Li Lingtian was bone-deep. He was humiliated by Cloudy Mountain Boy earlier, and now Li Lingtian was insulting him again. This was intolerable. He glared at Li Lingtian, but his heart trembled when he saw Li Lingtian. Because in his eyes, that young man was no longer a young man, but a divine sword that stood proudly between heaven and earth, a divine sword that could destroy heaven and earth, a divine sword that could destroy everything. This feeling made him feel that everything was an illusion, but he believed that this feeling was real. This was because he had met someone in the sect. When he saw him, he had the same feeling. It was Sword Young Master. She was stunned as she stared at Li Lingtian blankly. At that moment, Li Lingshan's gaze shifted to Cloudy Mountain Boy. His icy gaze was as sharp as a sword. Boom! There was a dull thud between heaven and earth as Li Lingshan's body burst forth with a destructive sword will that filled the entire sky. At the same time, Li Lingshan's body burst forth with the metal will of the Great Path. The combination of the metal will of the Great Path and the sword will cause the entire world to tear apart. Just the sword intent alone was able to tear the sky apart. The power was unimaginable. At this moment, Yang Xiaoyao and Qian Tu were shocked. The expression on Cloudy Mountain Boy's face also became strange. A martial saint actually had such terrifying sword intent. He secretly thought that this world really had sword arts. At the same time, Cloudy Mountain Child felt an illusion. When this young man displayed this sword intent, it was as if he had returned to 30 years ago when he met the Sword Young Master. One sword strike destroyed his mind and left a shadow behind forever. Chapter 868, Battle Between Experts. 1. Good, good, very good. I want to see how powerful you are. Cloudy Mountain Boy felt the destructive sword intent in the air. This sword intent was many times stronger than Yang Xiaoyao's sword intent at the beginning. The two of them were on completely different levels. The sword intent of a second sky martial saint was actually stronger than that of a second sky martial god. What kind of concept was this? It was completely beyond his imagination. At this moment, he did not dare to be careless anymore. It would not be good if he failed in the gutter. Immediately after, he circulated the true essence in his entire body to the limit. The domineering power of the third firmament war god realm was displayed. The sword intent in the air was repelled by the power of the third firmament war god. For a moment, Cloudy Mountain Boy's body emitted a faint halo, and he looked extremely mystical. Looks like you should be with Sword Young Master. Since that's the case, you should know this move. Sword Howl Heaven and Earth. Li Lingshan's sword will burst forth from his body. The destructive sword will and the metal Tao intent merged together, giving him an even more overbearing power. At this moment, he stretched out his hand and the divine martial black heavenly sword appeared in front of him. He reached out and grabbed the divine martial black heavenly sword. The divine weapon's shocking pressure pressed down on the Cloud Mountain Child. The divine martial profound heaven sword was a world-destroying sword. Just this pressure alone was not something that an ordinary expert could withstand. One had to know that this divine martial black heavenly sword was the most mysterious and powerful treasure in the divine martial continent. He held the divine martial black heavenly sword in his hand and sent out a terrifying true essence. He waved his hand. The sword intent changed, turning into a mysterious sword aura. Instantly, a sword beam slashed out with sword momentum. Between heaven and earth, this sword beam seemed to follow the trajectory of heaven and earth. The first move of the heaven-destroying sword formation, Sword Howl, was displayed. Sword Force. It's actually a sword aura. Yang Xiaoyao was shocked when he saw the divine martial black heaven sword in Li Lingshan's hand and the sword radiance that he unleashed. He did not expect Li Lingtian to cultivate sword force, which was even more terrifying and mysterious than sword intent. Any move in the world had its momentum. Controlling the momentum meant controlling the trajectory of the move and attack. The opponent simply could not block such an attack. The sword light was like a beam of light as it slashed down at the Cloud Mountain Boy. Cloudy Mountain Boy's face was filled with shock. At this time, he was already shocked to the point of no return. This was because Li Lingtian had unleashed sword intent and wielded a powerful divine weapon. What was even more unexpected was that Li Lingtian had managed to control the momentum of the sword. With one strike, the sword radiance locked onto him, leaving him no chance to defend himself. Golden Butterfly Double Shadow, Change. Seeing the destructive sword light descend, the terrifying sword light was like divine might, giving him no chance to resist. At this moment, he no longer dared to underestimate this martial saint powerhouse. His divine sense moved, and his finger waved. The three golden butterflies flashed, and in the end, the golden butterflies formed a line and a destructive golden light shot towards the sword light. Boom! A shocking explosion sounded. The golden light dissipated, and the sword light also disappeared at this time. However, the destructive sword intent wreaked havoc in the air. Cloudy Mountain Boy was the target of the attack. Although he had relied on his third heaven cultivation and the terrifying power of the golden butterfly to block it, the destructive sword intent tore his entire body apart. Instantly, his clothes were torn apart, and he looked as ugly as a beggar. Hush! Yang Xiaoyao and Qian Tu gasped in shock. They were completely stunned by this result. A martial saint expert who controlled a divine artifact, sword intent, and sword aura, and used sword howl to fight even a martial god. In the beginning, he was at the second firmament of the war god realm, and his myriad returning swords was defeated. Now, a second firmament martial saint had actually beaten up a third firmament war god, little boy Yun Shan, to such a state. This was the difference between them. Comparisons were infuriating. Sword Dao, this is only the first move. You'll know how powerful the sword Dao is when you see the real myriad of swords returning to the origin. After Li Lingtian swung his sword, his expression remained calm. It had been a long time since he used sword howl of the heavens and earth. He had no intention of using it to destroy the third firmament martial god. If he had such intentions, he would not be Li Lingtian. Looking at the power of the sword howl heaven and earth, which had destroyed the golden light of Cloudy Mountain Child, he was extremely satisfied. All of this was the power of the divine martial black heavenly sword and the power of the sword whistling through the heavens and earth. This power was comparable to the third heaven of the martial god realm and could be said to be heaven-defying. As the sound of his voice faded, his entire person floated up. His appearance was extremely carefree, and his body was like a sharp sword, giving off an invincible aura. The Heavenly Sword Physique. In front of the Heavenly Sword Physique, all sword techniques can be transformed into miracles. Li Lingtian said calmly without unleashing the divine martial black heaven sword in his hand. Instead, the aura around his entire body changed. His entire person was like a sharp sword that could fuse with all the sharp swords in the world. Outsiders couldn't see through the Heavenly Sword Physique at all, but Yang Xiaoyao, who was a sword cultivator, had a drastic change in expression as if he had seen a ghost. Heavenly Sword Body, Heavenly Sword Body. It's really the Heavenly Sword Physique. It's really the Heavenly Sword Physique. The Heavenly Sword Physique that the Sword Saint of the Divine Sword Sect mentioned has finally appeared. Ha, ha, the Heavenly Sword Physique has finally appeared. Yang Xiaoyao looked at Li Lingtian and his entire person went into a daze. Then, he burst into laughter with a look of excitement that was almost insanity. This situation shocked Qian Tu and Cloudy Mountain Boy. One could imagine how terrifying and magical the Heavenly Sword Physique was. It must be a heaven-defying physique. Even if he didn't know how powerful and terrifying the heavenly sword body was, just from the name, it was obvious that it wasn't a simple physique. While the three of them were still in shock, Li Lingshan's body began to slowly spin in the air. The divine martial black heaven sword in his hand floated in front of him and spun with Li Lingtian. At this moment, a stream of light flashed between Li Lingshan's brows. The heavenly one sword, the heavenly universe sword, and the heavenly fault sword had appeared. The three heavenly swords and the divine martial heavenly sword were connected. The four swords revolved around Li Lingtian with him at the center. The sword light was incomparably sharp, and the air was torn into pieces. At the same time, Li Lingtian slowly extended his right hand and a ball of light appeared in his palm. Yang Xiaoyao looked at the ball of light, and his expression became even more excited. Because he also cultivated the myriad returning swords, he naturally knew what was inside this ball of light. As expected, the ball of light in Li Lingshan's palm exploded and tens of thousands of sharp swords floated in the air. The world was filled with sword intent and sword light. This space had completely become a world of swords. Tens of thousands of sharp swords revolved around Li Lingtian, forming a world of swords. The long sword had a slight connection with Li Lingtian and was extremely intimate with him. This was the advantage of the heavenly sword physique. He could control any sharp sword in the world. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. At that moment, Yang Xiaoyao did not have the time to collect the long swords that were scattered on the ground. However, they flew up automatically and entered the sword world beside Li Lingtian. The terrifying sword light, destructive sword qi, and mysterious sword silk instantly fused completely at this moment, forming a mysterious halo. These halos were completely formed by sharp swords. The space and air were cut into pieces by the sword silks. The world trembled in front of this sword formation. 10,000 swords returned to the origin. This is the true 10,000 swords returned to the origin. Myriad returning swords is only the most basic thing in the sword formation. If you want to see the real sword formation, then you have to take this move from me. Don't disappoint me. It's been a long time since I've used a divine ability like this. Li Lingtian spoke calmly as if he was preaching. His voice was extremely calm, but there was a tinge of loneliness in his voice. It was the loneliness of an expert. Facing a third Sky Martial God Realm expert, a second Sky Martial Saint Realm expert actually said something like that. It had completely turned the world upside down. Qian Tu and Yang Xiaoyao were completely stunned. Everything in front of them was already an illusion or a dream. Since that's the case, I'll take this move of yours and see how powerful you are. You are the strongest martial saint I have ever seen. You should be the strongest martial saint in the entire divine martial continent, right? However, it's impossible for you to kill me. The power of yin and yang, insight into the world. Heavenly abode divine star border. Cloudy Mountain Boy no longer dared to view Li Lingtian as a weakling. Even if Li Lingtian was only a martial saint, he could be said to be the #1 martial saint in the divine martial continent. Meeting such a heaven-defying martial saint was indeed beyond his expectations. He did not expect such a terrifying martial saint to exist in this world. Facing the terrifying myriad returning swords, his heart trembled. He didn't dare to be careless at all, because he felt that if he was careless, he would disappear into thin air. Although he said it casually, he was still extremely fearful in his heart. He waved his hands, and the shocking power of the third firmament of the war god realm instantly erupted. 9 beams of divine aura descended from space. The divine aura turned into light and the 9 beams of light quickly fused. In the end, the fused beam of light quickly shot toward Li Lingtian. At the same time, a pitch-black shield appeared in front of him and shielded him. Boom! Li Lingtian pointed with one hand and the myriad returning swords burst forth. Instantly, Tens of thousands of sharp swords tore through the air. Each sword was connected to each other, and the sword silks, sword radiance, and sword aura tore through space. The distance between the two of them was less than 5 miles. To two heaven-defying experts, this distance was completely insignificant. Space was torn apart, and a shocking explosion erupted. The earth collapsed and the mountains shook. Even the Ken Palace in the distant lake began to tremble. Xian Tu and Yang Xiaoyao were both second Sky Martial God Realm experts. However, at this moment, they were completely stunned by the battle between the two people in the air. Rumble. Cece, cece. Huff, huff, huff. Kacha, kacha. The light and the sword formation collided, and countless mysterious sounds suddenly appeared in the air. The sword chi, sword light, and sword silks emitted by the sword formation continuously cut the light into pieces and eventually devoured it. Wherever the myriad returning swords passed, everything was cut into pieces and eventually devoured, even the air. Boom! At this moment, there was a loud explosion. The heavenly abode divine star border was completely destroyed by the myriad returning swords. Everything was devoured by the myriad returning swords. Cloud Mountain Boy's shield burst out with a strange light, which collided with the sword formation. The sword formation disappeared, and the 10,000 swords trembled. Cloudy Mountain Boy was thrown out. Chapter 869, Cloudy Mountain Boy, Death, 1. The sword intent in the air remained, but the sword formation quickly trembled and finally collapsed. Li Lingshan's expression was calm and the smile on his lips remained. However, Yang Xiaoyao and Qian Tu were shocked beyond words. A second Sky Martial Saint had used a sword formation to repel a third Sky Martial God. This was the power of the sword formation's sword Dao. It could allow a martial saint to fight against a martial god. It could even break through the powerful attack of a third firmament martial god like just now and even send people flying. Cloud Boy's face was deathly pale, and he looked extremely ugly. At this moment, he was indeed extremely shocked. He never expected that his attack and defense would be defeated by the other party in one move. In the end, if it weren't for the fact that he was a powerful third firmament war god, he would definitely have been destroyed by this attack and dissipated into thin air. As expected, it's not simple. Compared to that trash's sword Dao, it's on a completely different level. However, the stronger you are, the more I want to kill you. Metal Dao intent, golden butterfly heaven splitting. Cloudy Mountain Boy was shocked in his heart. At this moment, he had already lost his face. Moreover, this young man's cultivation was too terrifying. If this continued, he might fail miserably. Moreover, the Ken Palace was right in front of him. He could not let any accidents happen. He would first use his trump card to kill this young man before going to the Ken Palace. No matter the price, he had to kill this young man. As for the two second firmament martial god realm experts behind him, he did not put them in his eyes at all. With a flick of his divine sense, a scarlet pill appeared in front of him. Without any hesitation, he threw the pill into his mouth. Instantly, a shocking power erupted, and the true origin that he had consumed was instantly restored. Moreover, his cultivation base rapidly soared, and he only stopped when he reached the peak of the third level of the War God realm. The 3 golden butterflies flashed and Cloudy Mountain Boy flicked his fingers continuously. A destructive aura appeared in the world, the clouds changed color, and the wind disappeared. The entire world seemed to be exquisite. The strange aura in the air was extremely oppressive. The golden butterfly soared into the sky and disappeared. However, a destructive roar came from the depths of the sky. The shocking pressure formed a distorted shape and bombarded downwards. However, the pressure stopped in mid-air. The golden butterfly quickly absorbed the pressure, and the pressure of the world continued to enter the golden butterfly. The 3 golden butterflies exploded, and the golden wool in the air reached its limit. After the golden butterflies exploded, they formed a golden sword. The long sword formed 100-meter-long sword light in the air, which stirred up the pressure of the Xiaoyao immortal palace. Yang Xiaoyao, Qian Tu, Huangfu Yuyan, and the others were extremely shocked, and they saw the situation in the sky. The attack unleashed by a third heaven martial god was indeed powerful and heaven-defying. It was capable of overturning rivers and seas and destroying the heavens and earth. Li Lingtian was shocked to the core as he looked at the scene in the sky. This attack was definitely a divine ability of the saint level. When a third firmament war god used a saint-tier divine power, its might could destroy the world. At this moment, he did not dare to hesitate anymore. His eyes flickered. The third heavenly layer of the war god realm is the third heavenly layer. I've already killed 2 of them. I don't mind killing you. I can feel your killing intent, so you can't stay. Li Lingtian replied indifferently. His face was calm and the smile on his lips remained. This tone, this voice, to Yang Xiaoyao and the others, it was a complete mockery. At first, Cloudy Mountain Boy said that Li Lingtian could not be kept alive. The tables had turned, but Li Lingtian had taken back his words. This was undoubtedly a resounding slap to Cloudy Mountain Boy's face. However, this slap was no longer a big deal because one person would die after the battle. It would either be Li Lingtian and the others or Cloudy Mountain Boy. Both of them were extremely curious as they looked at Li Lingtian expectantly. He wondered how Li Lingtian could withstand this move and how he could kill Cloudy Mountain Boy. If Li Lingtian were to fail, the 2 of them would only be killed by Cloudy Mountain Boy. They were now looking forward to Li Lingtian killing Cloudy Mountain Boy. Rumble. In the air, Cloudy Mountain Boy's attacks shook the space as Li Lingtian's shocking sword will burst forth. With a wave of his hand, the myriad swords turned into a stream of light and vanished from Li Lingtian's body. Li Lingtian's eyes flashed as the long swords vanished. He then activated his divine consciousness. The divine martial profound heaven sword, 3 heavenly swords, and 5 divine weapon longswords appeared. A total of 9 longswords floated in front of him. The 9 swords spun continuously, and a destructive pressure was emitted from the 9 swords. Among the 9 swords, 1 was a peerless ancient divine artifact, 3 were heavenly swords, and the remaining 5 were divine artifacts. Such a combination was simply destructive. Each of these swords was something that would cause countless powerhouses to fight over. However, Li Lingtian had managed to gather all of them together. The more it was like this, the more excited Yang Xiaoyao's eyes became. As a sword expert, he naturally wanted to see the most powerful sword move. It was the first time in his life that he had seen Li Lingtian in such a state. Sword Dao isn't just sword moves. The sword formation is the most powerful existence. Heaven-destroying sword formation 99 Heaven-destroying sword formation. Li Lingtian's calm voice came out of his mouth. It was a plain voice, but it was like thunder in Yang Xiaoyao's ears. His eyes were filled with shock, as if he had seen a ghost. This was because the heaven-destroying sword formation was the mysterious cultivation technique of the divine sword sect. However, he did not expect it to appear on an unfamiliar young man. Moreover, it was cultivated by this young man. However, at this moment, what he wanted to see more was how powerful this young man was and to what extent. The extent of one's sword Dao cultivation was related to the safety of the divine sword sect. At that moment, Cloudy Mountain Boy's destructive attack was aimed at Li Lingtian. The space began to tear apart. Countless cracks appeared, and endless astral winds wreaked havoc in the space. The destructive attack locked onto Li Lingtian's aura. Li Lingtian could not dodge it even if he wanted to. He was shocked when he saw the destructive attack falling on Li Lingtian as he had yet to unleash his defense or attack. With this move, not to mention a second Sky Martial Saint, even a third or fourth sky martial god would be killed. However, just as they were worried, Li Lingshan's entire body changed as he activated his terrifying divine consciousness. The 9 swords began to spin rapidly. Li Lingshan's 10 fingers flicked as a series of mysterious hand seals were cast. Instantly, the 9 swords emitted sword chi, sword light, and sword silk. The sword chi, sword light, and sword silk formed a red pillar of light that could destroy the world. The air within a radius of several miles was devoured, and the light pillar grew stronger and stronger. Following which, Li Lingtian guided the destructive beam of light with one hand and it slashed down at Cloudy Mountain Boy's attack. Space was destroyed in front of this pillar of light. The air between heaven and earth turned sharp because Li Lingshan's light beam was a sword ray, a destructive sword ray, a sword ray that could destroy everything in the world. Boom! In an instant, the 2 attacks collided. Pfft! The earth trembled and collapsed. Yang Xiaoyao and the other were also torn apart by the destructive force. At this moment, the 2 of them were already stunned. Huangfu Yuyan and the others used their terrifying defenses to resist the tearing force. In the world, everything within a radius of 100 miles had already turned into nothingness, and everything had been flattened. Li Lingtian spat out a mouthful of blood. The 9 swords had returned to him before they transformed into a stream of light and entered his dantian. Tang Qingyue retreated backward and finally arrived beside Huangfu Yuyan and the others. She supported Li Lingtian and suspended him in the air, using her terrifying defense to resist the destructive force. In the sky, the golden light was still there. The expression on Cloud Mountain Boy's face kept changing. Fear appeared in his eyes, and in the end, it turned into despair. In the end, his eyes turned ashen and his body swayed in the air. Both Yang Xiaoyao and Qian Tu were shocked to see Cloudy Mountain Boy's expression. They were shocked as they did not expect Li Lingshan's sword to be so terrifying. It was beyond their imagination. This sword had even blocked a 3rd firmament martial god's trump card, and it had even shocked Child Cloudy Mountain. It was just that he didn't know if Cloudy Mountain Boy was injured. The sky was temporarily quiet. The force had disappeared. Everything was silent. Everyone's eyes were looking at the Cloud Mountain Boy in the sky. They were waiting for the final result to determine who was stronger. Phew! A gust of wind blew through the air. Cloudy Mountain Boy, who was originally floating in the air, quickly turned into fragments and disappeared. This situation left Yang Xiaoyao and the other 2 dumbfounded. In the end, their mouths were wide open, unable to believe all of this. Then, he rubbed his eyes, hoping that everything he saw was an illusion. However, it was all true. They were initially shocked that Li Lingtian was strong enough to fight against a 3rd firmament martial god. They never expected Li Lingtian to destroy Cloudy Mountain Boy with a single strike. However, he was still intact even after his destruction. If it were not for the breeze, they would not have known what happened to Cloudy Mountain Boy. Ah! The 2 of them could not help but exclaim in surprise. Their expressions turned extremely ugly as they looked at Li Lingtian as if they were looking at the devil. There was still such a terrifying powerhouse in this world, such an abnormal martial saint powerhouse. To think that you cultivate the sword Dao. With such a poor state of mind, you might as well not cultivate the sword Dao to avoid harming yourself. Li Lingtian snorted in disdain as he spoke indifferently. He glared at Yang Xiaoyao coldly. From the beginning to the end, he was extremely calm. Even if he didn't cultivate the Ice Soul martial spirit, he could still remain calm at any time, because this was the most basic thing for an expert. With the Ice Soul martial spirit, he could remain calm at any time. This also allowed him to remain calm when facing strong enemies. Thank you for your reminder, sir. May I ask where your sword Dao comes from? Yang Xiaoyao was utterly embarrassed by Li Lingshan's words. He was furious when he saw a second firmament martial saint reprimanding him. However, when he thought of how terrifying Li Lingtian was, he did not dare to get angry anymore. Instead, he thanked Li Lingtian. Although the other party was only at the second sky of the martial saint realm, he was a terrifying sword principle expert. He was even more curious about where Li Lingshan's sword doctrine came from. This was also his biggest question. If he could figure out this matter, he would have no regrets even if he couldn't obtain any treasures in the Xiaoyao Immortal Palace. Chapter 870, Strange, 1, You don't have the right to know yet. If Sword Young Master is able to defeat me one day, you can ask him. Li Lingtian looked at Yang Xiaoyao with a smile on his face. Gradually, his gaze turned sharp. He landed on the ground with Huangfu Yuyan and the others and walked in the direction of the palace. In the attack just now, he had used the 19 annihilating sword formation. Moreover, he had never used the 19 annihilating sword formation to the extreme. This time, it was the real 19 annihilating sword formation. You are indeed powerful, but you are still not a match for my senior brother. Yang Xiaoyao did not show the slightest dissatisfaction when he heard Li Lingshan's words. After all, the young man before him was too terrifying. It was so terrifying that he felt his heart tremble. It was the first time a second sky martial god powerhouse had seen a martial saint powerhouse so afraid. However, he knew that if this young man were to encounter Sword Young Master, he would really not be a match for him. After all, Sword Young Master had already reached the peak of the fifth heaven. The young man in front of him was only a martial saint, but his sword Dao was terrifying. If this young man were to become a martial god and use the Dao of the sword, there really wouldn't be many people who could suppress him. When I go to the divine continent, Sword Young Master will be nothing. I'm 25 years old this year. I hope Sword Young Master won't disappoint me. I'll go and meet him one day. You two can leave now. Sword Young Master is not my match. Sword Saint is my match. Step by step, he came to the edge of the lake. His voice traveled to the back. The further he went, the softer it became. In the end, only he could hear it. It sounded like he was talking to himself, but Yang Xiaoyao heard it. Upon hearing this voice, he was extremely shocked. It seemed that this young man had some understanding of Sword Young Master and Sword Saint. At the very least, he knew Sword Young Master and Sword Saint. The more this was the case, the more shocked Li Lingtian was. He did not know what kind of person this youth was. I shall take my leave. I hope that one day, you can come to the Divine Sword Sect. Yang Xiaoyao did not hesitate. Li Lingshan's strength alone was enough to kill a third firmament martial god in this place. Furthermore, he was not injured at all. How powerful was that? If he stayed, he would definitely be erased. Instead of doing this, it was better to leave this place to avoid offending others. After saying that, his figure flashed and quickly left, finally disappearing into the horizon. Qian too took a glance at Li Lingtian and left without hesitation. None of the martial god powerhouses were fools. Naturally, they knew the situation they were in. If Li Lingtian had not arrived when they first encountered Cloudy Mountain Boy, the two of them would have perished. Now that Li Lingtian had killed Cloudy Mountain Boy, he was even more terrifying than Cloudy Mountain Boy. If he didn't leave, he would be courting death. After the duo left, Li Lingtian did not hesitate to fly toward the palace by the lake. As for Cloudy Mountain Boy's storage pouch, he had already put it away. The palace in front of them was as green as jade, and the dense water spiritual energy was shocking. Li Lingshan's expression turned serious as he looked at the palace. This palace was the Ken Palace of the 9 temples, and it was also the first palace. Only by obtaining the items in the first palace and taking control of it would he gain the upper hand. You can go in. Well, protect you. Huangfu Yuyan looked at Li Lingtian and exchanged glances with the other girls before she spoke. The Xiaoyao Immortal Palace was extremely mysterious. At first, Li Lingtian obtained a fragment and the even more mysterious Water Dao intent. The Qian Palace and the Qin Palace belonged to the water element. Only by gathering the fragments of the two palaces together could the will of the great path of water be perfected. This was just their guess. Whether it was true or not, they would only know if they looked at it once in a few palaces. If this palace also had a fragment, their guess would be correct. Li Lingtian nodded and walked toward the palace step by step. His entire body soared through the air as he gradually approached the palace. The closer he got to the palace, the more intense the water will became. It was even denser than the Qian Palace. As expected. Looking at the dense will of the great path of water in front of the palace and the terrifying water spiritual energy, his face revealed an excited expression. His guess was right. This Qin Palace also had the Dao intent of water because the Qin Palace and the Qian Palace belonged to water. Now that he had come here, he had also obtained confirmation. At this moment, he no longer hesitated and quickly walked into the palace. The will of the great path of water spread out, allowing the powerful and terrifying will of the great path of water to enter his body and his sea of consciousness. In the palace, a piece of golden paper was constantly emitting a mysterious will. As the broken characters entered his awareness, Li Lingtian closed his eyes slightly and accepted the tempering of the water will of the way. At that moment, he was completely immersed in the water will of the way. The water Dao intent he had obtained in the past was too shallow. Now, this will of the great path of water was the true will of the great path. Although the Dao intent of water before and after were both Dao intent, the profoundness and depth between the two were completely on a different level. The will of the great path of water that he had obtained in the Qian Palace suddenly became clear. Everything became clear in his sea of consciousness. Water could carry a boat, but it could also capsize it. Water was soft, but when the will of the Dao of water was controlled to the extreme, it could unleash the power of its softness to destroy the world. Water was the most magical attribute in the world, and also the most mysterious existence. Ding dang. With a crisp sound, the golden paper in the air turned into a copper sheet and fell to the ground. Li Lingtian was already jolted awake. The expression on his face was incomparably excited. The will of the great path of the two palaces had fused together, and the will of the great path of water had reached another level. Now, the will of the great path of water no longer made him feel confused. Instead, it gave him a new understanding and a deeper understanding of the will of the great path of water. He opened his eyes and picked up the fragments on the ground. The fragments were exactly the same as the ones in the Qian Palace. However, the runes on it were different, and so were the engravings. The Qian Palace's fragment had the word Qian while the fragment here had the word Kansas. After obtaining the will of water from the Qian Palace and the Qin Palace, I've gained the initiative. At least, no one else can obtain this will. However, Xiaoyao Immortal Palace opens once every 2,000 years. Why didn't anyone take this will away? Li Lingtian put away the fragment and allowed Tang Qingyue and the others to enter the palace. They then began to search the place quickly. However, other than some medicinal herbs, there were no other items in this palace. After that, the group of people quickly left the palace and flew into the distance. As he flew, he muttered to himself. This problem had actually appeared in the Qian Palace, but he had not said it out loud. There should be a lot of treasures in Xiaoyao Immortal Palace, but he did not encounter any treasures when he came to the two palaces. Instead, he obtained the will of the Great Path. It was as if this will of the Great Path was specially created for him. The more this was the case, the greater the doubt in his heart. It was because it was impossible for the experts who had entered the Xiaoyao Immortal Palace in the past not to obtain this will. If it was the will of the forbidden land of the Tianhe zone, it could be explained clearly, because that will could appear again over a long period of time. However, the will of the palace was in the fragment, and the fragment was a physical object. Could it be that even physical objects could appear again? This didn't make sense. This place is full of mysteries. That's right, and there are 99 people who came in. They should be scattered across a wide area. Their goal is most likely to come for the 9 temples. Since they know about the existence of the 9 temples, why has no one obtained this will before? This Dao intent seems to be specially prepared for Big Brother Ling Tian. It's better to be careful. If we want to crack this secret, we should wait until all the wills of the 9 temples appear before we know the secret here. However, although we have obtained the will of water from the Qin Palace and gained the initiative, the will of the other palaces will definitely be destroyed if we encounter a heaven-defying expert. After Li Lingtian voiced his question, the girls began to discuss it. They had already thought of this question, but it was not appropriate to voice it out to prevent it from affecting Li Lingtian. Moreover, according to Li Lingshan's conjecture and array Dao deduction, everything was as he had guessed. Not all of these people are here for the 9 temples, but for a certain treasure. However, if we want to obtain this treasure, we have to start from the 9 temples. As long as we control the Qin Palace of the 9 temples, our chances will be higher. However, the people from Xiaoyao Immortal Palace came here randomly. Naturally, they wouldn't come to Qin Palace directly. If they were too far away, no one would come here specifically. Perhaps I'm worrying too much. This fragment doesn't appear every 2,000 years. Li Lingtian said earnestly. Although he said that, he did not think so in his heart. This was because this matter was too strange and too smooth. With such a smooth matter, the other experts should have obtained the will of the Great Path countless times. He would definitely not wait for his arrival unless it was his previous life. However, his previous life was Jiuyang Divine Lord. Jiuyang Divine Lord's soul had already fused, so it was impossible for there to be another soul. Besides, he knew almost everything about Jiuyang Divine Lord's previous life. Although Jiuyang Divine Lord was heaven-defying, he did not know Array Dao. It was impossible for him to have any connection with Xiaoyao Immortal Palace. The group flew quickly. This time, they were looking for the Dui Palace and the Kuan Palace. These 2 palaces were the closest to the Qian Palace and the Qin Palace in the 9 temples. According to the 9 temples and 8 trigrams formation, this was a shortcut. The Qian Palace and the Qin Palace in front belonged to the water, the heavenly water. The Dui Palace and the Kuan Palace that he was looking for now were of the fire element, earth fire. Li Lingshan's expression changed at the thought of this as he felt an inexplicable sense of nervousness. This was because the divine power he cultivated was ice and fire. He was the first to obtain the water attribute, and he would have to find the fire attribute next. If there was a conflict between them, it would be difficult. He was inexplicably nervous, and this nervousness made him feel afraid. On the surface, this nervousness was for the ultimate attribute, but the real feeling was from the scrutiny of the outside world. This kind of scrutiny was hidden, and he used his nervousness to cover it up. He covered it up for himself, or rather, some powerful existence that defied the heavens covered it up for him. Anyone else would not have noticed this feeling, but Li Lingshan's powerful divine consciousness and soul allowed him to easily sense it. He could not help but look into the void. I recommend the new book, Ancient Sage Myriad Ancient King. Everyone is welcome to read it and save it. I need everyone's support. Only with everyone's support can the new book go further. Everyone, please collect the Eternal Holy King first. Well, look at it after you've fattened up. Thank you, everyone. Chapter 871, Bei Ming Shui in Danger. 1. He stopped and looked at the void with a serious expression. He wanted to find that person first, but there was nothing in the void, blue sky, and white clouds. Why did this mysterious existence help him hide his nervousness? This was something he could not understand. In such a dangerous place, it was normal to be nervous. There was no need for others to hide for him. What's wrong? Huangfu Yuyan asked when she saw Li Lingtian stop. She looked at him with her beautiful eyes. It's nothing. Li Lingtian shook his head as he replied indifferently. He then transmitted his voice to the other girls through secret voice sending and voiced out his thoughts. This feeling was like an inexplicable heavenly secret that no one could see through or ponder over. Following that, Li Lingtian circulated his ice soul martial soul to calm himself down and stop thinking about anything else. Things would come when they should. There was no way to hide. It was useless for him to waste his energy thinking about it now. In the depths of the void, a surprised voice sounded. This voice was simply inaudible. No one noticed it either. It was just like the sound of the wind. After waiting for billions of years, I've finally waited for someone who has perfected the 5 elements Tao intent. An ethereal voice sounded from the sky. It was like he was talking to himself, and no one heard it. Li Lingtian and his party flew quickly to the west where Dui Palace and Kuan Palace were located. However, it was not that easy to find these two palaces. In the Xiaoyao Immortal Palace, the height and speed of flight were restricted, and the divine sense was also restricted. It was impossible to fly quickly, so they naturally could not use the flying ship to fly. He could only ride a flying sword. In this way, he could only fly 10,000 to 20,000 miles a day. They didn't dare to go out at night and could only find a safe place to rest. In this vast and boundless Xiaoyao Immortal Palace, it was simply boundless. It was simply difficult to ascend to the heavens to find a palace. Fortunately, Li Lingtian was infinitely close to becoming a divine array master and his array Tao cultivation was extremely profound. As long as he could find the general direction, it would be easier to find the palace. During the day, Li Lingtian and the others flew straight to the west and found a safe place to rest at night. Along the way, they would collect the medicinal herbs they encountered. At the same time, they would encounter other experts, but they would all take a detour. Whoosh! In the sky, a peerless figure flew past. When this figure flew, his divine sense looked around carefully. It's been 5 days, and there's still no news from that bastard. You're not reliable at all. If I had known earlier, I would have entered the divine dragon ring. I wouldn't have to fly so carefully. If I were to encounter any danger, I'll teach you a lesson. The peerless figure looked a little tired and finally found a hidden place to land. She was dressed in snow-white clothes and had a peerless charm. Her face was covered with a veil, but this peerless charm was undoubtedly a peerless beauty. Bei Minxue was just like her name. Her clothes were snow-white and her skin was as white as jade. She was like a goddess from the 9 heavens. After following Li Lingtian into Xiaoyao Immortal Palace, they were randomly teleported. They waited for a long time but did not receive any information from Li Lingshan's token. In the end, they could only give up. However, the token was always in his hand, and he was looking forward to the news of the token appearing. During this period of time, Li Lingshan's strength had been imprinted in her mind. Although he was only a warrior sage powerhouse, his strength was terrifying. She was a mighty martial god powerhouse, yet she was relying on Li Lingshan's strength. Now that Li Lingtian was gone, she was afraid of this place. It was a girl's instinctive fear of unknown. After landing, she pouted her red lips and said fiercely, the fire spiritual qi here is so dense." Bei Minxue sensed the aura in the air, and her expression changed. She had an ice attribute and was naturally sensitive to fire. Now that she felt the aura of the fire attribute, she naturally discovered it immediately. Ice elemental martial artists had a natural resistance to fire elemental energy. Bei Minxue's expression turned ugly when she saw this kind of fire elemental energy. Originally, he wanted to take a good rest, but he did not expect that there would be pure fire-type spiritual energy here. Naturally, he could not rest here. If it was somewhere else, even if there was fire-type spiritual energy, it would not affect him. Because the 5 elements spiritual energy in other places were balanced, it could not affect any martial artist at all. However, this place had a type of fire-type spiritual energy, and the fire-type spiritual energy was very dense. The will of the great path of fire, there's actually the will of the great path of fire. What a pity. It's a pity that I'm of the ice element. If I were of the fire element, my cultivation would definitely soar when I encounter this fire intent. Bimingsu's face revealed a hint of regret. However, she immediately thought of Li Lingtian. Li Lingtian possessed the 5 elements Tao will, which was suitable for him to cultivate. If he could obtain this Tao will, his cultivation would definitely soar. Forget it, let's leave first. Bei Minxue sighed and prepared to leave this place. However, just as he was about to leave, the expression on his face changed because of the sound of air being torn. When the voice sounded, a figure had already appeared in her line of sight. At the same time, the other party had also seen her. Hee, since you're already here, don't leave. There's no one here. It's really lonely. Stay and accompany me. A young man in green descended and blocked Bei Mingxu's path. A terrifying pressure enveloped the area within 100 meters. The peak of the second sky of the war god realm had a terrifying pressure pressing down on Bei Minxue, making her unable to resist at all. Trash, get out of the way. You've already disrespected this queen. If you don't let go, you'll regret it. Bei Minxue could feel the terrifying pressure, and her face behind the veil was filled with shock. In such a dangerous place, her identity was of no use at all. She could only depend on her own cultivation. In this place, the strong were respected. However, he was currently facing a powerhouse at the peak of the second level of the war god realm. He did not have the slightest bit of power to resist at all. A cold voice sounded. Even though he was restrained by the pressure, he displayed an unattainable temperament and a holy aura that kept people 1,000 miles away. Humph, Bei Mingxue, the proud daughter of the Baiming family of the Divine Continent. Where's Lin Zhirong? Where's that young man? You're alone now. Do you still want to use the Baiming family's identity to suppress me? When I catch you later, I will make you want to die. Hee. Zhao Tianyan's eyes scanned Bei Mingxu's body, and his divine senses searched the surroundings. However, he discovered that Bei Mingxue was the only person in this place, and a sinister smile appeared on his face. Looking at Bei Mingxu's peerless charm, he was instantly mesmerized. You're courting death. Bei Mingxu's expression behind the veil was slightly angry. The pressure from her entire body erupted, but her pressure at the first heaven of the war god realm was completely unable to resist the pressure from Zhao Tianyin at the second heaven of the war god realm. However, when this pressure appeared, he could temporarily move. He only needed an instant to move his divine sense. The jade hairpin on his head shot out. It turned into a sharp sword as if it wanted to pierce through this space. In the blink of an eye, the jade hairpin pierced through the pressure and hit Zhao Tianyin. Tisk. Pft. The sound of a body being pierced through rang out. The jade hairpin pierced through Zhao Tianyin's chest and flew out from his back. When it reappeared, it was already in Bei Mingxu's hand. Zhao Tianyin spat out a mouthful of blood. His body moved, and the pressure weakened a little. Taking advantage of this opportunity, Bei Mingxue twisted her body and disappeared. Dark North Divine Moon Art, Spiritual Moon Intent. Bei Mingxue floated in the air. Her entire being was pure and holy. She wore pure white clothes and made a mysterious gesture with her hands. Following that, her slender jade-like hands swiped downwards, causing the world to lose its color at this moment. A beam of moonlight appeared during the day. The moonlight ignored the space and shone down. In the blink of an eye, it enveloped Zhao Tianyin. Chi-chi, 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 chi-chi rumble. Pft. The moonlight was like water, entering Zhao Tianyin's body like it was invincible. At the same time, the sky was cut by the moonlight, making a sizzling sound. Zhao Tianyin's expression changed drastically. He had never thought that Bei Minxue would actually injure him under his pressure. She had taken advantage of his distraction to use such a terrifying move. His entire body was bombarded by the moonlight. The moonlight was everywhere, and there was no way to resist it. However, a peak second firmament martial god's cultivation base was ultimately not something a first firmament martial god could defeat. He spat out a mouthful of blood as a shocking power erupted. With his cultivation base, he no longer dared to let the moonlight attack him. Immediately, the moonlight in the sky was defeated by the terrifying power and disappeared. A trace of blood leaked out from the corner of Bei Mingxu's mouth, and her face was extremely pale. She had just used her secret treasure to injure Zhao Tianyin under the pressure and distracted him. She took the opportunity to escape and used the Baiming family's big move to injure Zhao Tianyin in one move. However, the difference in realm could not be made up for. While he injured Zhao Tianyin, he was also injured. She was extremely shocked. This second heaven of the war god realm's strength was indeed terrifying. Her cultivation level was not as high as the second heaven, but she was extremely smart. When she saw that she was no match for Zhao Tianyin, her figure flashed and she was about to leave. However, just as he was about to leave, the space around him was suddenly sealed. He was caught off guard and fell down. "You want to leave? Bitch, how dare you hurt me? Today, I'll let you have a taste of lust and death. I'll torture you to death later." Zhao Tianyin's face was filled with rage. After being injured twice in a row, he could no longer hold it in. Seeing that Bei Minxue was about to escape, he naturally wouldn't let Bei Minxue have her way. The terrifying pressure sealed the space, causing Bei Minxue to fail in her escape. She looked at Bei Minxue coldly with an evil smile on her face. In his heart, he could already imagine Bei Minxue being teased by him and having fun in front of him. Chapter 872, The Miraculous Ice Flame, 1, Chi-Chi. Under the terrifying pressure, Bei Minxue had no chance to move at all. At first, Zhao Tianyin was unexpectedly injured by Bei Mingxu's jade hairpin. Now that he was on guard, he naturally wouldn't give Bei Minxue another chance. Stretching out a hand, he quickly swung it at Bei Minxue. Several hand seals landed on Bei Mingxu's body, and she was instantly trapped on the ground, unable to move at all. His eyes were filled with fear, and his expression changed drastically. Even if he wanted to commit suicide now, there was no chance. Phew. Zhao Tianyin arrived in front of Bei Minxue with an evil smile on his face. His eyes kept scanning Bei Mingxu's exquisite body. He stretched out his hand and drew a line in front of Bei Minxue. The veil fell off, revealing a stunning face. At this moment, Zhao Tianyin was completely stunned. Bei Minxue was one of the 10 great fairies of the divine continent, but not many people had seen her true appearance. Now that they had seen Bei Mingxu's peerless appearance, their minds were filled with shock. He did not expect such a beautiful girl to exist in this world. Her temperament and elegance were enough to make all the men in the world go crazy. The veil on Bei Mingxu's face fell off. Being stared at like that by Zhao Tianyin, she felt humiliated. However, she couldn't even move her fingers. Hee hee. Iceberg Fairy Bei Minxue, one of the 10 fairies of the divine continent. I didn't expect to have such good fortune. Just be obedient. When the time comes, I'll give you a quick death. Zhao Tianyin looked at Bei Mingxu's peerless beauty, and his heart thumped wildly. If Bei Minxue wasn't a member of the Baiming family, he would definitely have to keep her here. However, Bei Mingxu's identity wasn't simple, so he didn't dare to keep her. He could only kill him to prevent the Baiming family from finding out. After he finished speaking, he reached out and stroked Bei Mingshue's face. Bei Minxue could not move at all. She looked at Zhao Tianyin coldly, and 2 streams of crystal-clear tears rolled down her cheeks. If you dare to touch me, I won't let you off even if I turn into a ghost. Trash, why are you humiliating this prince? When he comes, he will burn your bones and scatter your ashes. At this moment, Bei Mingxue was no longer the supreme martial god, nor was she the high and mighty saint emperor of the mystic Moon Empire, nor was she the genius daughter of the Baiming family. She was now just an ordinary woman. Facing the humiliation, he was already extremely afraid. A girl's most important honor and purity were about to be insulted. Her heart was already trembling, and she wished she could die immediately. She thought of Li Lingtian. If he were here, he would not let her get hurt. However, she did not know where this person was now, nor did she know that she was in danger. As she thought about it, tears kept falling. Him? You mean that pretty boy? He's just a martial saint gigolo. Fortunately, he is not here. Otherwise, when Zhao Tianyin heard Bei Minxue mention him, his outstretched hand immediately stopped, and a disdainful expression appeared on his face. He immediately thought of the white-robed young man, a second sky of the martial saint realm expert. He was extremely arrogant because of Bei Minxue and Lin Zhirong. He even asked him to buy a token with 30 billion. Now that he didn't see the young man and Lin Zhirong, he was naturally emboldened. He even wanted to see the young man here. If he saw the young man, he would definitely burn his bones and scatter his ashes to get the spirit stones back. However, before he could finish speaking, a cold voice sounded in the air. This voice was extremely cold, almost freezing the entire space. How about this? What else can I do? His voice was bone-chilling. Zhao Tianyin shuddered and turned to look at the sky. When he saw the figure flying over from the sky, his expression changed. He became excited, shocked, and a trace of inexplicable fear. However, when Bei Minxue heard this voice, the tears on her face grew even more. Her entire body trembled as she looked at the white figure in the sky. She felt extremely wronged and finally found a way to vent her anger. A white-robed young man was flying over at a high speed. He seemed to be very slow, but with a single step, he arrived 100 meters away from Zhao Tianyin and stopped steadily in the air. He scrutinized Zhao Tianyin with a calm expression. However, the smile on his face was cold and sinister, and there was a cold killing intent in the air. Swoosh swoosh swoosh. Swoosh swoosh swoosh. At this moment, another group of peerless figures flew over and arrived beside the white-robed young man. Li Lingtian. Zhao Tianyin called out to the white-robed young man in excitement. Indeed, it was Li Lingtian, Huang Fuyuyan, and the rest. After flying for 3 days, they finally found this place because there was pure fire-type spiritual energy here. He had also discovered the aura of a powerhouse here. Following the direction of the light, he did not expect to find a familiar aura. This familiar aura was extremely familiar to Li Lingtian. This was because he was familiar with Bei Minxue and Lin Zhirong. If it was Lin Zhirong, he wouldn't be worried. He would only be worried about the other powerhouses. However, if it was Bei Minxue, he would have to worry. Bei Minxue was a girl, and she was only at the first level of the martial god realm. If she were to meet an opponent, she would not be a match at all. It was really Bei Minxue, and she was in an extremely dangerous situation. If she had been a step late, Bei Minxue would have been humiliated. Li Lingtian's killing intent surged when he saw someone insulting Bei Minxue. He had already determined that the other party was about to fall. That's right, it's me. I want to hear it. If I were here, what would you do? Li Lingtian stared coldly at Zhao Tianyin. The peak second heaven martial god realm was indeed powerful. However, compared to the third firmament of the war god realm, the difference was still too great. The two were on completely different levels. He had even killed 2 or 3 third firmament war gods, so he would take a second firmament war god seriously. As soon as he finished speaking, a ball of icy flames appeared in his palm. The icy flames flickered in his palm, and a deathly aura erupted in the space. Everyone knew how terrifying the ice flame was. It was extremely powerful and magical. The fist-sized icy frost flame morphed into various shapes, just like the myriad objects in Li Lingtian's hands. Li Lingtian, you're just in time. I was just about to look for you. Let's see how you can be so arrogant in front of me without Lin Zirong's help. Zhao Tianyin looked at Li Lingtian and glanced at the icy frost flame in Li Lingtian's hand. His heart trembled at the icy frost flame. Good. Since you dare to humiliate my family, then wait for my judgment. Li Lingtian's divine consciousness moved and the icy blaze in his palm quickly blasted toward Zhao Tianyin. Instantly, the space trembled in the face of the destructive aura of the icy blaze and the blaze. It was a shocking sight. In an instant, the icy flame arrived in front of Zhao Tianyin. Sensing the destructive aura, Zhao Tianyin's expression changed. Without any hesitation, he grabbed Bei Minxue behind him and charged toward the ice flames. Bei Minxue could only watch helplessly as she faced the cold ice flames. Her entire body had become Zhao Tianyin's shield. Zhao Tianyin took the opportunity to dodge as well. A destructive pressure was hurled at Li Lingtian. Qi, Sister Shui. Might of the heavens and earth. The ice flames landed on Bei Minxue's body. Bei Minxue and the other girls were stunned. They never expected such a situation to happen. Tang Zimeng and the others exclaimed. Their faces were pale as they were stunned by the scene in front of them. However, Li Lingtian did not react in the slightest. Instead, he unleashed his mighty pressure and sent it forward. The power of heaven and earth collided with Zhao Tianyin's pressure. Rumble. With a dull thud, Zhao Tianyin was tossed out. Li Lingtian's figure flashed forward and appeared before Bei Minxue. With a swipe of his hand, the icy frost flame returned to Li Lingtian's palm before disappearing. Bei Minxue was unharmed. Li Lingtian hugged Bei Minxue as his body swayed once again and he arrived before Huangfu Yuyan and the others. Huangfu Yuyan and the others, as well as Zhao Tianyin, were all shocked by this action. Sister Shui, are you alright? Sister Shui, how are you? Instantly, all the girls opened their mouths to ask Bei Minxue, waking her up from her shock. From the beginning to the end, she could not believe that Li Lingtian's frost flame had landed on her. With Li Lingtian's intelligence and strength, he would not attack at all because he knew that she would be used as a shield. However, Li Lingtian had to attack. Furthermore, it was the terrifying icy frost flame. The power of the icy frost flame was well known. Even a martial god would lose half his life if he did not die. Now that he had woken up, he quickly checked himself. He was not injured at all, and he was instantly shocked. I'm fine. What's going on? Bei Minxue asked Li Lingtian when she saw the situation. The other girls and Zhao Tianyin were also looking at Li Lingtian, wondering what was going on. When they heard Li Lingtian's words, their expressions changed drastically. I've already mastered this icy frost flame to the point of perfection. Destruction and rebirth are all dependent on my will. I used the ice frost flame just to tease that trash. A faint smile appeared on Li Lingtian's face as he told her about the ice flame. He had complete control over the icy frost flame. The power of the icy frost flame depended on his will. Pfft! Damn it, this venerable self will definitely pull out your tendons and skin you today. Huangfu Yuyan and the others' expressions kept changing, but they were all extremely happy. However, Zhao Tianyan's anger was immediately triggered by Li Lingshan's words. He spat out a mouthful of blood and glared at Li Lingtian. He hated Li Lingtian to the bone. A second sky of the martial saint realm had actually ruined his plans and even humiliated him in front of so many beauties. If he did not skin Li Lingtian alive, he would not be able to vent his anger. Chapter 873, Li Lingtian is angry. 1. Then let's see how many chances you have to escape from me today. If you can't escape, I'll extract your soul and refine it today. Li Lingtian let go of Bei Minxue and took a step forward. The aura around him surged. He stood proudly in the air like a god of war, and a terrifying pressure ruthlessly crushed towards the other party. He had just used the might of heaven and earth to crush his opponent's pressure, and he understood that the pressure of a second heaven war god was inferior to the might of heaven and earth. Since the second heaven war god had begun to use pressure to suppress him, he would now use pressure to suppress the second heaven war god as well. It was a tooth for a tooth. Bei Minxue felt a wave of disappointment when she sensed Li Lingshan's release. However, it was time to finish off the opponent. Li Lingtian was the only one who could take care of this second heaven martial god and avenge her humiliation. She began to look forward to Li Lingshan's appearance in times of danger. As expected, Li Lingshan's godlike appearance brought her hope. Li Lingtian was becoming more and more pleasing to the eye when he looked at him. His thin back appeared extremely imposing at this moment, like an unshakable mountain, giving people a sense of security. Damn it! Zhao Tianyin was enraged when he heard Li Lingshan's words. A second firmament martial saint had actually put on such a stance. His arrogant tone was beyond his imagination. Without Lin Zhirong, he was still so arrogant. He was courting death. Moreover, she even used her pressure to retaliate against him. This slap made a loud sound. As soon as he finished speaking, a terrifying pressure had already erupted. Immediately, two terrifying pressures bombarded in the air. Rumble. Boom. Boom. Li Lingtian unleashed his heavenly demon domain and the power of heaven and earth clashed fiercely with Zhao Tianyan's pressure. Today, I will let you know what it means to extract souls and refine them. The difference between the second heaven martial saint's pressure and the second heaven martial god's pressure was too great. Even if Li Lingshan's pressure was terrifying, he was still no match for Zhao Tianyin and could only fight to a draw. Seeing this situation, he did not hesitate. The terrifying true essence in his body instantly disappeared and his body retreated. However, when he retreated, a terrifying black demonic chi erupted from his entire body. His hair fluttered in the wind, and 3 exquisite lotus-shaped runes appeared between his eyebrows. The runes were scarlet red, and his entire person became demonic. Saint Demon Quintessence. Divine Magic Dragon Blade. Li Lingshan's demonic chi burst out from his body and the monstrous demonic chi wreaked havoc in the space. He floated in the air like a demon god. In his hand was a long, pitch-black demon blade that emitted destructive demonic chi. Then, he waved his hand, and the Saint Magic Dragon blade in his hand was swung out. Instantly, a brilliant light flashed. Rumble. Pfft. With a loud explosion, the destructive demonic chi attack of the Divine Magic Dragon blade struck Zhao Tianyan's body fiercely. Zhao Tianyin was thrown out and spat out a mouthful of blood. The terrifying holy demon chi corroded his meridians and blood essence, causing Zhao Tianyan's expression to change drastically. This situation was completely beyond Zhao Tianyan's imagination. He did not expect Li Lingtian to be a demonic cultivator, and the power of his demonic skill was terrifying. The power of the devil blade in his hand was even more terrifying, directly destroying his true essence and meridians. However, before he could react, Li Lingtian swung the divine magic dragon blade in his hand again. The light of the divine magic dragon blade swept across the sky. In the blink of an eye, dozens of destructive attacks bombarded Zhao Tianyin. Boom! Boom! Rumble! Destructive sounds erupted in the air. Zhao Tianyin kept dodging the attacks, but he had no chance to dodge at all. In an instant, he became like a sandbag, constantly being bombarded. There were traces of blood at the corner of his mouth, and his clothes were already tattered. He looked like a beggar. Saint Devil Chi, 9 Heavenly Devil Finger. At that moment, Li Lingtian seized the opportunity. The divine magic dragon blade in his hand floated in front of him, and with a flick of his finger, a destructive and eerie aura was released. Tisk. Pft. Ah. A crisp sound rang out as his body was pierced through. Zhao Tianyin spat out a mouthful of blood, followed by a miserable cry. His body fell rapidly, shaking continuously. Turn around. Li Lingtian shouted at Huangfu Yuyan and the others when he saw Zhao Tianyin injured. Because he didn't want Huangfu Yuyan and the others to see the next move. You must be prepared to pay the price for humiliating my family. Try my soul destruction technique. Huangfu Yuyan and the rest were stunned. Although they were confused, they obediently turned around and did not look at Li Lingtian. Sensing Huangfu Yuyan and the others turning around, Li Lingshan's face turned vicious and his lips curled into a cruel smile. With a flick of his divine consciousness, the Saint Demon's quintessential understanding was activated. Instantly, a shocking amount of demonic qi condensed rapidly and Li Lingtian disappeared into it. In the air, strange demonic qi fluctuations appeared. Then, the demonic qi turned into countless thin threads. The thin threads pierced through space and slammed into Zhao Tianyin's body. The injured Zhao Tianyin couldn't move at all. When he saw the countless thin threads enter his body, a hint of relief appeared on his face. This was because the young man in front of him was too terrifying. He was so terrifying that he could not accept it. He had never thought that he would one day fall at the hands of a martial saint. Now that he had fallen, everything was in the past. However, he never expected that the thin thread would not free him. Instead, it brought him endless pain, unimaginable pain. Ah, ah, ah. Ah, ah. For a moment, screams sounded in the air, and the screams resounded throughout the world. Huangfu Yuyan and the rest understood that Li Lingtian was truly enraged this time. Bei Mingxue felt a sweetness in her heart. Although Li Lingshan's methods were vicious, it was all because of her. Otherwise, with Li Lingshan's strength, he would not need to use such a demonic technique. The demonic technique was only meant to inflict pain on Zhao Tianyin. In the sky, as the last scream fell, the wind disappeared, and the demonic qi disappeared. The world fell silent as Li Lingtian retracted his devil skill. When he finally returned to Huangfu Yuyan and the others, Zhao Tianyin had already vanished completely. It's done. Li Lingtian looked at Bei Mingxue apologetically. This time, he had almost humiliated Bei Mingxue. If he had allowed Bei Mingxue to enter the divine dragon ring, this wouldn't have happened. His voice was extremely gentle and Bei Mingxue could feel Li Lingshan's guilt. You bad guy. Bei Mingxue's tears flowed down once again. Her slender hands clenched into fists as she continued to hit Li Lingtian. She could not blame Li Lingtian as she was a powerhouse. Furthermore, she had a slim chance of survival in a place like this. Moreover, her cultivation was higher than Li Lingshan's and Li Lingtian had even saved her. However, at this moment, she was venting her anger on Li Lingtian. She did not seem to hate him, but rather, she was acting coquettishly. He would only act like this in front of someone he could rely on. Huangfu Yuyan and the rest looked at Li Lingtian and Bei Mingxue. They knew how Bei Mingxue felt. If it were any other girl, they would feel worse than death when they were humiliated. Fortunately, they had arrived in time. Otherwise, Bei Minxue would not have been spared. Li Lingshan's expression was calm, but he felt awkward being stared at by the other girls because there were a few of them who were his wives. However, he still reached out his hand and pulled Bei Minxue into his embrace. His palm caressed Bei Minxue's back. At the same time, his heart was trembling. Bei Minxue was a peerless beauty, one of the 10 great fairies of the divine continent, the Ice Mountain Fairy. She was extremely cold and kept people 1,000 miles away. He was a high and mighty existence, and his entire body carried a holy aura. But now, he was in his arms. As a man, this was definitely a kind of pride and supreme happiness. As his heart trembled, he also felt Bei Minxue's body tremble. Bei Minxue's heart was trembling with nervousness. Gradually, she forgot everything that had just happened. The feeling of being held in his arms was intoxicating and exciting. After some time, Bei Minxue stopped crying and Li Lingtian gently pushed her away. He reached out to wipe the tears off his face. This action was extremely familiar, but he soon realized that it was Bei Minxue in front of him, not Huangfu Yuyan and the others. Instantly, he felt extremely awkward. Huangfu Yuyan and the others looked at Li Lingtian with a half-smile. Bei Minxue felt a wave of disappointment when she was pushed away. This feeling was too unbearable. However, when he saw the expressions of Huangfu Yuyan and the others, he blushed and wished he could find a hole to hide in. "Sister Shui, I'm sorry. I was too careless." Li Lingtian opened his mouth to break the silence and the strange and ambiguous atmosphere. His expression was serious. This time, he was truly enraged. If something really happened to Bei Minxue, he would never forgive himself. Even if the entire world was destroyed, it would not be able to make up for the damage Bei Minxue had suffered. Now, he understood that he had been too careless this time. If he had called Bei Minxue into the divine dragon ring, this wouldn't have happened. "Little brother Ling Tian, I can't blame you. It's because I'm too weak. You still saved me now." Bei Minxue naturally understood the guilt in Li Lingshan's heart. There was no one else in the world who could make someone like Li Lingtian feel guilty. She was definitely the first person to make Li Lingtian apologize. The feeling just now was really intoxicating. This time, it was worth it. In the future, I definitely won't let anyone hit you with a finger. If anyone makes you angry, I will slaughter the entire divine martial continent. Li Lingshan's expression was extremely serious as his body exuded a faint aura. Although his voice was calm, his tone was frighteningly loud. However, the girls felt extremely blissful when they heard it. This was because Li Lingtian was a man of his word. The fact that he had said such words was enough to show how important they were to him. Following that, Bei Minxue curiously asked Li Lingtian about what happened after he entered. Chapter 874, The Palace Under the Mountain. By the way, did you come here after you came in? Bei Minxue asked Li Lingtian curiously after calming herself down. However, her face was still blushing when she looked at Li Lingtian. After all, she had just witnessed Li Lingtian getting angry because of her and she had even cried in his arms. It was definitely a first for her to reject people thousands of miles away from an inexperienced girl. In the past, she had never even been close to a man, let alone like this. When others talked to her, they would look up to her. Now, she was crying in the arms of this young man. She felt shy, but she did not reject this feeling. After I came in, I knew I was in trouble. This Xiaoyao Immortal Palace is random. The people who are teleported in are all random. It's impossible for them to be together. However, I cast an array formation and waited for a day before leaving. I didn't expect to encounter a third firmament martial god expert as soon as I left. That third firmament martial god is indeed too terrifying. I also escaped and came to the Qian Palace. I obtained the will of the Great Path of Water, which wiped out that level 3 expert. Li Lingtian explained his entry into Xiaoyao's celestial palace at an unhurried pace. He also briefly explained the 9 temples. Bimingsu finally understood what was going on. It was sheer luck that she was saved by Li Lingtian earlier. It was fated. Otherwise, she would have been teleported to this place in such a huge Xiaoyao immortal palace. Moreover, everything was strange and coincidental. Such a coincidence was indeed a little too much. However, it was a good thing overall. After all, there were no problems and they came over safely. This place is to the north of Xiaoyao Immortal Palace. The north belongs to fire, and the earth fire is in the palace. Since the fire elemental spiritual energy appeared here, Dui Gong should be not far away. Let's search here first and try to find Dui Gong as soon as possible. Li Lingtian finally explained the situation of the place. He then recalled that Zhao Tianyin must have come here for Dui Gong. Since an expert like Zhao Tianyin had come here, he believed that other experts would also come here. Therefore, they had to find the Dui Palace before the other experts arrived and enter it. Alright. Ying and you are the only ones with the fire element. We only have the ice element, but we can work together to sense the source of the fire element spiritual energy and find Dui Gong. Huangfu Yuyan waited for Li Lingtian to finish speaking. She knew that this matter could not be delayed in case other powerhouses arrived. Hence, she voiced her thoughts. Fire-type powerhouses were naturally the easiest to sense. However, ice-type and water-type powerhouses were naturally sensitive to fire-type powerhouses, so they could naturally sense the existence of fire-type powerhouses with ease. Moreover, this place was the Dui Palace, which was filled with earth fire. The will of the fire path and fire spiritual energy were dense, so it was not difficult to sense them. Following that, the group of more than 10 people began to sense the fire attribute spirit qi while Li Lingtian and Xianyuan Yingying remained suspended in the air. The two of them held each other's hands. The 5 elements sacred body was activated, and the 5 elements will of the way started to circulate. Instantly, everything between heaven and earth was under the control of the sea of consciousness. The 5 elements heaven and earth, his entire person had fused with this heaven and earth. Gradually, the spiritual energy and everything in the world entered their consciousness. After an unknown period of time, the two of them opened their eyes at the same time. They looked at each other and smiled. With this kind of 5 elements sacred body, the two of them had already reached a level where their hearts and minds were connected. They had even more perception than if they were one. They could know each other's thoughts. Let's go. Li Lingshan's voice reached Tang Qingyue and the rest's ears before they flew away quickly with Xianyuan Yingying. Tang Qingyue and the others saw Li Lingtian and his companion's situation and understood that they had located Dui Gong. Then, the group of people flew quickly, tearing through space and quickly flying into the distance. However, they did not fly far. They covered the distance of 20 miles in a moment. Li Lingtian and Xianyuan Yingying stopped in front of a mountain peak. The mountain peak was not big but it was extremely tall. The entire mountain peak was emitting hot air. Even the rocks were fiery red, and the blood-red color was extremely dazzling. Everyone arrived in front of the mountain peak, their faces revealing shock. This is the Dui Palace. Tang Zimeng looked at the mountain peak with a curious expression. No matter how she looked at it, this mountain peak had nothing to do with a palace. She was not the only one who was curious. The other girls were also staring at Li Lingtian with their beautiful eyes. Wait a moment. I'll set up some formations here before we talk. Li Lingtian was not surprised as he looked at the mountain peak. It did not matter whether it was a palace or not as long as the fire will was here. However, the prerequisite was that he had to set up some formations in this place to hide the tracks of Huangfu Yuyan and the others. The main thing was to use formations to hide the existence of this mountain peak. In case any heaven-defying changes happened, and he felt a sense of danger. Because he had the will of the 5 elements, he could only exert the greatest power after the will of the 5 elements was balanced. Previously, he had obtained half of the will of water from the Qian Palace. If he only obtained the ordinary will of fire now, it would affect his cultivation of the 9 heavens. Although he was a little worried, he couldn't hesitate anymore. His divine sense moved, and a light flashed between his eyebrows. The divine array diagram appeared in front of him. Then, he flicked his 10 fingers and cast a series of incantation gestures. The incantation gestures landed on the divine array diagram, and it immediately began to tremble. Swoosh, swoosh. Swoosh, swoosh. Light screens appeared in the sky. When the light screens descended, this part of the world had already been hidden. Without a powerful array master, it was impossible to discover the situation here. After an hour, Li Lingshan's clothes were drenched and he looked exhausted. However, the array formation in this place had been completely activated, and the mountain peak had disappeared. After doing everything, he felt a little relieved. He rested for 2 hours and waited for his spiritual energy to recover. His body flashed as he chanted incantations. Sacrifice. He pointed his 10 fingers at the mountain peak inside the array. Immediately, the formation trembled, and the mountain peak trembled in front of this spell. Boom! With a shocking explosion, the mountain peak was strangely split into 2 halves. However, this mountain peak was not split open, but some kind of mechanism was triggered, and the mountain peak was split into 2 from the middle. In the mountain peak, a shocking fire-type spiritual energy soared into the sky, and the will of the great path of fire appeared. Purple-white flames flickered on the mountain peak, emitting an aura that could burn the world. At that moment, Li Lingshan's body flashed and he flew toward the sea of flames on the mountain peak. At the same time, Li Lingshan's body was engulfed in flames. The flaming sacred body had already been activated. With the flaming sacred body, he naturally did not fear the flames and was naturally fused with them. Chi-chi, chi-chi, he disappeared into the sea of fire, and sizzling sounds could be heard. Li Lingshan's figure entered the sea of fire and felt the burning power of the sea of fire. However, as a flaming sacred body, he was not afraid of such power but felt a sense of familiarity instead. This was the power of the flaming sacred body. It had a natural affinity with the will of fire. He had the will of the 5 elements, so he was very close to the will and attributes of the 5 elements between heaven and earth. However, he liked the fire element the most because he had the flaming sacred body. There was no conflict between the flaming sacred body and the 5 elements sacred body. On the contrary, the flaming sacred body would only become more magical. Swoosh! He quickly flew down. The sea of fire below the mountain was like a bottomless abyss. The lower he went, the stronger the flames became. He didn't know how far he had flown. He could only feel the pressure below getting stronger and stronger, and the flames getting more and more terrifying. Finally, he landed on the ground. The ground was covered in fiery red flames, but his flaming sacred body naturally had no fear. Below him was a vast sea of fire. Through his familiarity with the sea of fire, he could see through the sea of fire at a glance. There was a palace in the sea of fire. The palace was no different from the Qian Palace and the Qin Palace, but the attributes were different. The palace was filled with flames. All kinds of flames formed this palace. The will of the fire. As expected, it's here. This is Dui Palace. Li Lingtian walked forward step by step. His body passed through the sea of fire, completely ignoring the raging flames. He looked at the words Dui Gong on the palace and felt the rich will of the great path of fire. The will of the great path of fire now was on a completely different level compared to the will of the great path of fire he had obtained in the Tianhe zone. Boom! When he arrived in front of the palace, a stream of earth fire surged toward him. Li Lingshan's eyes were calm and he was completely fearless of the incoming earth fire. Any destructive flame attack or Phoenix's nirvana required the baptism of flames. He had the flaming sacred body, so he was naturally not worried about these flames. The raging flames continued to temper his body, but Li Lingtian did not show any pain on his face. Instead, he seemed to be enjoying it. No matter how powerful this flame was, it would not be more terrifying than the Nine Suns' sacred flame. He was refined by terrifying existences like the Nine Suns' sacred flame and the ice flame. His entire person had the flaming sacred body, which was also the heart of the flaming flame. If he was afraid of the flame, it would be a joke. Crash! The door of the palace opened at this moment, and a destructive will of the great path pressed over. Li Lingtian could no longer relax when the destructive will of the great path arrived. The flaming sacred body was only his physique and he was not afraid of the flames. However, the will of the great path was an ethereal consciousness. If he couldn't bear it, he would be destroyed by this consciousness. It was just like how humans were born to eat rice. If they ate too much, they would die from bloating. Water could carry a boat, but it could also capsize it. This was the principle. Those who played with fire were burned to death, and those who knew how to swim were drowned to death. These were all common occurrences. Li Lingshan's expression was solemn as the destructive fire will of the great path bombarded him. He held himself together and endured the baptism of the will. He walked towards the palace door step by step. Gradually, he crossed the palace door and entered the blazing palace made of flames. When he arrived at the palace, the will of the fire was even more terrifying. The extent of its terror had already exceeded Li Lingshan's imagination. Chapter 875, The Arrival of a Strong Enemy. Li Lingshan's expression turned grave when he sensed the terrifying fire will of the way. He looked at the sky above the palace. A golden page was floating in the air, emitting a faint golden light. Li Lingtian was not concerned about the golden light but the mysterious characters on it. When he saw the golden page, his face revealed an excited expression. His guess was right. This golden page was a fragment of the will of the great path of fire. The Qian Palace was a part of the will of the great path of water, while the Ken Palace was another part of the will of the great path. The two wills of the great path of water could be combined to perfection. This was the Dui Palace now. Earth fire, but there should only be half of it. When he found the will of the great path of fire in the Earth Palace, he would be able to complete it. Boom! At this moment, the golden page emitted a destructive will of the great path of fire. The will of the great path of fire entered his sea of consciousness. Immediately, Li Lingshan's face revealed a pained expression. However, his eyes were filled with determination and a hint of excitement. Gradually, he closed his eyes. He had the flaming sacred body, so he was more familiar with the will of fire. For a moment, he entered a state of selflessness. Flaming sacred body, will of fire. Not good, the will of the Tao of water has loosened. Li Lingshan's expression gradually relaxed as he comprehended the fire will of the way. However, in just a moment, extreme joy turned into sorrow. The will of the Tao of water in his body loosened at this moment. He knew how terrifying this situation was. The expression on his face also changed. He had never expected such a thing to happen. Ice and fire combination. Heaven and earth reincarnation art. With such a thing happening, he didn't dare to hesitate anymore. He quickly used the ice and fire fusion, balancing the two attributes. However, the two cultivation techniques were unable to suppress this water will at all. Instead, it became even more terrifying. Li Lingtian opened his eyes and his expression was one of shock. He kept thinking of ways to balance the two attributes, but it was not what he had imagined. Huh, since you're a genius, then you should go against the heavens. I've arranged so many benefits for you. Don't tell me you can't even endure this bit of hardship? You might as well just destroy it. I hope you can get through this. Either you die or you're reborn. In the depths of the void, that ethereal voice appeared again, but no one heard it either. The voice was filled with anticipation. If Li Lingtian knew about the voice's existence, he would understand that it was being manipulated. However, at this moment, he was already on the verge of death. At his cultivation realm, death meant that he would vanish into thin air. The will of the great path of water, the terrifying will of the great path of water continued to wreak havoc. It was as gentle as water, but at this moment, it became extremely terrifying. At the same time, the will of the great path of fire continued to wreak havoc, and his entire person became the center of destruction. No matter what cultivation technique it was useless. He had never thought that the destructive fusion of ice and fire would cause a backlash on his body. The will of the great path was ethereal. When encountering such a thing, it was not only physical pain, but also the pain of consciousness. His entire body was suffering from the pain of destruction. His body kept twisting as if he was about to be destroyed at any moment. Not good, Big Brother Ling Tian is in danger. At this moment, Xianyuan Yingying, who was waiting outside, said with a worried expression. At the same time, Huangfu Yuyan and the rest sensed that Li Lingtian was in danger. Naturally, they could connect with Li Lingtian through dual cultivation. Now that Li Lingtian was in trouble, they could sense it even if they were thousands of miles away. What problem did little brother Ling Tian encounter? Big brother, what problem did you encounter? How is young master? At that moment, Ji, Yun Yaoyao, and the others asked in unison. They were not aware of Li Lingshan's condition and were anxious to ask Xianyuan Yingying. All of a sudden, the group of girls became extremely anxious. In their hearts, Li Lingtian was their pillar of support. Without him, they would not know what to do. Big Brother Ling Tian's Dao intent of water and Dao intent of fire have backfired. Xianyuan Yingying's face was filled with confusion. Li Lingtian had the 5 elements sacred body and the flaming sacred body. He had the 5 elements Dao will and the attributes of the 5 elements could not harm him. But now, such a thing had happened. It was indeed confusing. All of this was simply impossible. It was completely beyond their imagination. Don't worry. He will have a way. Even if we are anxious, we can't help him. Our main problem now is to restrain the people outside. Huangfu Yuyan consoled the other girls as she looked into the sky. A red-robed elder flew over from the void. His clothes were fiery red, and even his hair was fiery red. Before it reached the array, the air seemed to be destroyed by the terrifying power of flames. A fire elemental expert, 3rd Firmament War God. After Huangfu Yuyan spoke, the other girls also saw the experts flying over from outside the array. All of them revealed shocked expressions. Although the experts outside were temporarily unable to discover their existence, the array formation would not be able to hold on for long in front of a 3rd Firmament War God. If the array was broken, they would have to face this 3rd Firmament Martial God expert. Yes, Big Sister Yu Yan, you guys use the 5 elements reincarnation. I'll use the 5 elements Dao intent to support you, and Big Sister Shui will stall for time for Big Brother Ling Tian. Xianyuan Yingying looked at the experts outside and said seriously. Now that Li Lingtian had gone down, it was a crucial moment and they could not allow Li Lingtian to be disturbed. They had to work together to stop the 3rd Firmament Martial God powerhouse outside and buy as much time as they could for Li Lingtian. All right. All the girls nodded and took out their treasures. When the array was broken, they would attack together. Outside, Shiman Wushuang landed with a surprised look in his eyes. I didn't expect someone to arrive earlier. It's useful to use an array formation in front of others, but in front of me, don't even think about hiding it from me. However, this array formation is quite powerful. It should be a holy array master. Let's see if your array formation is more powerful or my flame golden body. Shimen Wushuang looked at the empty space. However, with his cultivation at the third heaven of the martial god realm and an array master, his array Dao cultivation was not profound enough. But even so, he could still tell at a glance that there was something strange here. It was obvious that someone had cast an array formation. Blazing golden body. Heaven and earth incineration. A look of disdain appeared on Shimen Wushuang's face. The true essence in his entire body soared. Suddenly, the pressure of the third sky of the martial god realm soared into the sky. The world trembled continuously in front of the third sky of the martial god realm. At the same time, Shimen Wushuang's entire body turned into a blazing golden body. It was as if the world was about to be destroyed and burned by this blazing golden body. Then, Shimen Wushuang's huge flaming fist smashed fiercely towards the array. Boom! Tisk! Rumble! Chi-chi, chi-chi in the sky, the air was constantly burning. The destructive fiery fists bombarded the array formation fiercely, and the array formation began to tremble. The formation trembled, and the air was filled with raging flames. The entire world had turned into a sea of fire. Huangfu Yuyan and the others looked at Shimen Wushuang's strength and their hearts trembled. Their expressions were extremely solemn. The outside couldn't see the situation inside, but the inside could see everything outside. Rumble. Chi-chi, chi-chi, the array formation trembled continuously. Shimen Wushuang's attacks at the third heaven of the martial god realm continued to tear the array formation apart. This formation was merely a hidden illusory formation cast by Li Lingtian. Its power was not heaven-defying. But he hadn't expected to be discovered by a third firmament war god. Moreover, this third firmament war god knew a little about array formations. This was luck. What else could he say when he encountered such a thing? Prepare to attack. Tang Qingyue said as she looked at the situation outside. This was because the formation was about to be destroyed. He had to use the 5 elements reincarnation when the formation was destroyed. This way, he could give the other party a destructive blow and catch them off guard. They were both martial emperor powerhouses. Naturally, they would not believe that the other party would have anything good to say. If they met in this place, it would be a matter of life and death. After saying that, he circulated all the true essence in his body. The other girls also circulated their vital essence and unleashed the 5 elements reincarnation. Bei Minxue, Yun Yaoyao, Ge, and the others were all prepared. As soon as the other party broke through the array formation, they would unleash their strongest attack. Well, attack first, the 5 elements reincarnation will be second, and Ge's mysterious sky divine arrow will be last. Bei Minxue looked at the strength of her group and began to make arrangements. As a martial god expert, she was extremely experienced in battles. The power of the mysterious sky divine arrow could destroy the heavens and earth. She could not let her opponent discover it. She had to wait until the other party was not paying attention or could not be distracted to use it. Alright, get ready. The group of girls nodded and used their trump cards. Their beautiful eyes were all looking at the array seriously. Rumble. The array kept trembling, and Shimen Wushuang's face was filled with excitement. Based on his understanding of arrays, he knew that the will of the fire was here. Coupled with this array, the will of the fire was undoubtedly here. Void sacred flame, break. Seeing that the array had reached the end of its attack, Shimen Wushuang circulated his true essence and a destructive flame bombarded the array. Rumble. With a shocking explosion, the array finally began to crack. With a tearing sound, the array formation cracked and then completely shattered. However, at this moment, several devastating attacks blasted out. The overwhelming attacks landed on Shimen Wushuang like meteors. 5 Elements Reincarnation. Dark North Divine Moon Mantra. Moonlight Intent. True Dragon Chi. Instantly, the destructive attack smashed down fiercely. Shimen Wushuang's expression changed drastically. He never thought that there would be so many experts in the array. Looking at so many attacks, his heart trembled. In this situation, there were at least a dozen experts. The experts who came in were all martial god experts. Even he did not dare to withstand the attacks of so many martial god experts. His heart trembled as he was shocked by the situation in front of him. You're tuning in to the Xiaofan's Wuxia Tales YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.